like to call to order at 4:30 our 8th school committee negotiating subcommittee meeting with the TTA, both teachers and ESPs. Please all rise for the pledge of allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so Mr. Libby is just running a few minutes behind. He had to get the sign-in sheets, so when they do come, if we could all pass them around, just so I can attach those to our minutes would be great. And then, hope you all had a great April vacation, April break. It's been good weather. So as we've been doing, Mr. DePietro is our agent and has been our lead for our negotiating team. So I'll open this for her to then open for you. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I understand, Connor, that you may have something to present, so do you want to start with that?
Yes, I'm going to turn to Emily Noel.
Oh, I'm
This
so
is the
sorry.
No worries. Yeah, we'll start with the ESPs.
Starting with ESPs, sorry.
I've shared the Google Doc.
Yeah.
Due to the printing issues, but Emily will take over.
Okay, so I'm just going to start in order, so if you don't have it in front of you, maybe we can follow. All right. So starting with, I guess this is a common proposal, is the subcontracting. So we did understand your concern about adding like hard numbers and dates to things and how that might not be feasible. It's hard to plan, that kind of thing. So instead we went with, I'm going to call it like a statement of intent. So I'll read it for those of you who don't have it in front of you. So it says, for the duration of the CBA, the school committee commits to steadily reduce the number of unit positions, and then it says parentheses, ESPs, SLPs, psychologists, testing, et cetera, close parentheses, filled by outside contracting agencies. This pivot away from the use of outside contractors is meant to ensure student safety and education throughout the district. The progress of this commitment will be presented at the first and final joint labor management meetings of the year between the school committee and the TTA. So it essentially just says that there is an intent to reduce the numbers and that those numbers be presented to both sides, you know, twice annually, I suppose. Okay. So we thought that that took care of our concerns about it being steadfast, and also yours about the hard dates and all that kind of stuff. Okay. Does anybody have a question about that?
I think I understand. Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, all right, cool. All right, so then continuing to go through. So then the next, we had already done that part. Okay.
No, please do.
The salt we did. Sorry, I'm trying to skim through.
Yeah.
That one's TA. Sorry, now everything's in here, so I'm just going through the whole thing. All right, so I think then we're going to go to the first ones that are just ESPs, because then the rest of these, then the rest of these are joint. So that'll be on the teacher side. We did. Sorry, because we couldn't print it. Give me 1 second.
It looks like you're...
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
We have a copy here. It looks like you're maintaining your parental leave proposal as initially stated.
Oh, yes, we were going to talk about that in the teacher one, but that is all
Okay,
the
fine.
common ones are in here too, yeah.
I got you. Okay.
So then I'm going to go to the ESP specific ones. So then that would be, starting with the prep time one, so section 4, so article 16, section 4. I'll give you a second.
Article 16-4.
Oh, it is page 9. We numbered the pages. Page 9, sorry.
Okay, got it.
I didn't even notice that, thank you.
Well, the TT response is on page 10.
So just to help everyone, I'm going to give you a little quick digital anatomy. So on the side at TTA response, if you click right there, it'll go right there with you. Dina did that, not me.
Yes.
It's very helpful. It's extremely helpful though. Like it's really gotten me. It's really good. So
Do we have something?
They're printing it as we speak.
Okay.
Yes,
and we're on page 10.
yep.
Page 10.
So we were looking at the prep times. So it says, so we're countering the last, I guess, prep time proposal. So it says, we're still on, oh, because we're matching them, okay. So for we're trying to alter for the 4, like, days where we get out half days for the teachers. right? So we're still concerned about the PD allotment on those half days is our main concern. So we looked at prep time and we looked at that PD time because you had kind of put them together as well. So we, so it has that the unit members are guaranteed prep time to meet with teachers and specialized personnel, and we have it at, it could be set up as one 30-minute block, the two 15 minutes, depending on how, I know that you had put 20 minutes before and after the school day based on the times, so I'm not sure if you want to stick to the 2020, but we broke it up in that regard. And then this is the one we just wrote. Or this is the one we just wrote. This one, okay. All right, so then if we go to the 4 days that are those half PD days. So on the 4 district-wide release days, so those workshop days, the ESPs can elect to stay for student work after student can stay for work after student dismissal time for their per diem rate, which is pretty much what now, right? That is what it is right now. On the professional development days for workshops for the ESPs, as you gave us the list for. On the additional days, kindergarten through grade 4, all ESPs remain for the duration of the contractual day. K through 4 should be afforded the remainder of the contractual day after student dismissal and duties, all that things, for individual or coordinated prep time. And then K through 12 ESPs will receive 60 minutes per week. So instead of breaking it up by time, as long as it's 60 minutes per week, the building principals could figure out how to divide it up. So we had been going back and forth on the 15 minutes here, 15 minutes, then you guys had 20, 20, and 20, but realistically, it's just easier if the principals probably figure it out. So we thought that sentence gave them the ability to schedule the 60 minutes per week. However, it fit for the building and the person, I suppose.
Yeah, I think the intention was that sort of chart that we showed last
Right.
time was just a mock example. It was
Right.
not to intend to, that should be the way it is or anything like that.
Right, and we realized that one of the things is the contractual, like, student time shift because of the buses and whatever.
Sure.
And so we thought it was a little complicated to hammer out, like, minutes before and after and all these types of things.
Yeah.
And so if it worked for the principals to do 2 30-minute blocks or 3 20-minute blocks or however it works out, that we're just looking for the hour throughout the week, whether it's the example you gave or some other fashion.
Right.
Does that make sense? Okay. You want me to keep going? I see Roseanne reading it. Yeah. Okay, all right. All right, so then the next one is the salaries part, which is complicated, so we're gonna walk through it. So there's a few things about the salaries that we would like to talk about. So first of all, we are fine with just swapping to 7 hours. We understand I don't know if it was logistical on your end. We understand that it might have been like nice for some people to stay, but we're okay with just swapping to 7 hours and making that math easier and just making it clear cut for everybody. So because of that, it's a little confusing because we kept like deleting the 6.2 and trying to like account for it, okay? But I think we're sticking with that. We also have in that part about the 90 or more days that we had already kind of gone through. So we've just taken that out. To account for that, we went with the, sorry, so I'm gonna go down to page 11. I'm at the bottom of 11. Page numbers help.
And I don't know if I'm interrupting your flow.
No, go ahead.
I'm sorry, you're probably going to say it. 181 days, it looks like.
Yes, 181, because of the PD days right now, it's still not, the change in pay and plus what has been offered as PD is not, it doesn't make up those days. It's not equivalent, and it's not, the list of PD that was given, we cannot find. We can find where PD is offered to ESPs who stay, but the things that are listed, other than the new IEP training, other than that one, we can't find any, like, what you would call an advertisement for those specific features. And so we are still concerned about what the PD would look like going forward on those 4 days. So we kept the 181st in that vein. Okay, let's see. Then we did that one. That one's done. Then we have long-term substituting's done. Long-term, right? I've never gone through it like this. Usually I have my list and I'll go through it like this. It's fine. All right, so if we go, so I'm on 15 for reimbursement. Does that?
Long-term sub, but what about the short?
No,
The short
it's not
term
EPC, it's
rehabilitation?
cancel. They're on
Remember,
page
we agreed not to
15.
take that line out until,
Right.
Okay, so I guess, yeah, let's see.
Hold on, give me 1 second, Liz, I'll find the thing.
Are you talking about coverage?
No, the
yeah, the coverage of the classroom.
Page 13.
And then, oops, wait a minute.
This one, Why would you control that short term?
They're taking this out.
Yeah, but that part where, this prescriptive, I'm talking short.
And I don't have anything to look at. so I
Isn't that
apologize.
under the district number 1, Emily?
Well,
It
wait,
is.
the district number?
I just
Oh, is
control find short term.
Yeah, this overlaps with,
There's like
It's one of those
proposals.
overlap ones, yeah.
don't apologize, it's,
That was 25.
Emily, if you're, I'm assuming you're going in order, Emily, so on page 14, before we
Yep.
get to page 15, I noticed there that from the last meeting, maybe actually 2 meetings ago, one of the things was you're holding on longevity, but amenable to clarification from the business manager.
Yes.
So do we owe something for that, Mr. Libby?
Well,
I think we-
I couldn't hear.
In regards to longevity?
It's the TTA.
Is there something specific that can you speak to that you're looking for that? I just want to make sure we
For-
give you everything that you're asking for.
You mean for the longevity part or for the part for
Yeah.
Dave with the June 30th being the?
No, the part about, well, I don't know, it just says holding on longevity, but amenable to clarification from the business manager, so
I think the clarification was the new sentence about how the years of service were
the
calculated.
90-91, okay, so you've gotten that, okay.
Yeah,
all right.
that part we're good, yes.
I think what we're still holding on now is just the amounts.
The amounts, yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
all right, so we're gonna go all the way to 28. Doesn't feel like it's fun.
But we,
So we're on 28, 28?
Oh, yeah, all right, okay. Pretty sure. Sorry, I just don't want us to have, we're gonna have to jump all over. All right, so, we had previously been fine with the long-term sub part. We had gone through that, so I'm on 28 and 29. So then we've been back and forth on the short-term sub part of it, so I'll give you a second. So the last time you countered, you had put in the language and said we would hold off on the year to see if it needed to be implemented. So we're amenable to that with kind of a shift. So because there's no base data right now as far as anyone can figure, there's no base data, we would like there to be some kind of base data before so we have something to compare to. So our proposal is that during the 24-25 school year, so starting next year, both parties can keep track of how often that there's no ESP to cover for a class. So how often does it happen, which is what you had proposed last time. We propose that there would be some kind of mutually agreed upon form. So if the building principal can't find anybody to cover for a certain day or class, there's this form. Form gets filled out. The building rep ESP says, yep, you're right, that happened. We couldn't find anybody, signs off on it, and then we would go over it at JLM so that we have some kind of base data. And that the data would be used to track if this need comes up. So if we notice like, oh my gosh, yes, you're right, there's like this big spike, then we could re-look at, do we need to change the short-term sub-language so that principals can either force a move or maybe we just need to look at how the process works, something like that. But since there's no base data, we weren't sure what we would be comparing anything to.
So are you proposing that this goes in the contract?
That there
saying
be
this?
some type of system, yes, that contractually we would be tracking it and that data would be compiled so that we could see whether or not it is in fact, a change is needed to the short-term language.
So is it fair to just use the language that the data will be tracked, but to allow the administrators in each respective building to track in the way that makes sense for that building?
So we assumed what would happen is because the problem, the foreseen problem is that there would be times when no ESP could step up and cover. And so that then there would need they'd have to essentially force the coverage. That was what the concern was, and our concern was if you force the coverage, then what happens to that person's duties, like job during the class block. So we would like to, yes, track how often that happens with some type of form, and that both parties would be like, yep, this did in fact happen. And so that way we could say, oh, it happened twice at the doing, 3 times over here, once over here, or it didn't happen at all for November, but it did in December, things like that. Because right now there is no data, like nobody's tracking that as far as we could find. So we would need something to say, like, yes, it's happening a lot, it's happening once, or maybe it's happening more at one building than the other kind of situation. Does that make sense?
It makes complete sense. I just, in just listening to the logistical differences between the elementary to the high school, it feels like, or seems like, operationally, things work very differently in each building.
Right.
Without even speaking to the team,
Yeah.
I'm gathering that this defined system might not be what works for everybody, but yet tracking the data is something I think we can all agree on. But in terms of this system, might not be the right system for everybody. Does that make sense?
For each school.
Each school.
So I think the idea was that for the most part, the way that things have been working are going to continue to work.
Yeah.
But we wanted some sort of mutual responsibility of knowing when something occurred that would necessitate someone being forced to do
Yeah,
it.
of course.
Or that would have been that case. What we don't want to happen is just have some sort of like, we have a JLMC and, yeah, I think there was like 5 times that I tried to ask
Right.
somebody and that, not that, listen, people are very busy. Like we don't expect everybody to know everything, but if we can kind of have some sort of mutual discussion, whether it's a form, whether it's, this was an incident that had to happen. If you'd like to, confirm with whoever it is that we asked to move up or to step up.
Okay.
I think that's what we're getting towards.
Right.
Yeah, okay, makes sense.
Got it.
I know the things that are on the list that we need to go through, I'm just making sure that I get them. That we just talked about, that's longevity. I can look at this.
I think the next one is District 6, because we have a responsibility.
District 6, PD.
Page
For the 33.
Nope, 37 for the TTA response, so. For District 6.
Thank you. Response 423. Oh, yeah, safe. All right, so 37, we're on
Page
page
37.
37. Okay. Okay,
We're staying with the one.
sorry.
We had to take out all of that because
Oh, yeah, yeah.
we're at 181.
Okay, so I might have ended up backtracking myself, I apologize. So 37, where it says TTA response 423. Okay, so this is the workshop days, we had to switch to we're holding with the 181. However, we're putting in, I'm just gonna read the part that we're adding. So all ESPs will attend workshop if they, wait, where? Hold on.
That's current language.
That's the part. We get one, this is we attend. But where is-
Hold on, I'm sorry.
So this is the current language.
Right, but where- Oh, so we're
We're just adding.
Just
they
adding, okay.
added.
All right. So ours isn't from, yes, people. Yeah, okay. So because of our concerns with the PD, there exists a PD committee on the teachers' end of things, right? And they've met with Lori multiple times, it's gone quite well. So the ESPs are interested in adding an ESP person to that committee, so that, because that committee has done such good work in the last year, that perhaps that would help alleviate some of the concerns that we have about the PD options going forward for ESPs. So currently that is just like teacher unit members and admin, so this would mandate an ESP person onto that existing committee to address those concerns. Does that make sense? So we would just be expanding by that person.
And then we would agree to.
And then we agree with the part about the rescheduling PD days, that seems normal.
Emily, would the unit consider then, if we were amenable to that, to going back to the 184?
I think we can talk about it.
Talk
We'll
about
talk,
it.
yeah, we'll
That's
talk about
Something
it.
we can say to you now.
So you want to be involved in a PD committee, but you don't want to be there for PD days?
Right, makes sense. Well, we want to know that this PD is,
Well, we want to know that you want to work 184 days, so,
right, but I've been to PD before. We had 184 PD days.
Sure.
And we fought to get them out because they were not of any value to us.
okay, so you want to be involved in the committee that
I don't
decides?
want to commit to 184 again
Sure.
and then not have them be of any value.
Yeah, I think I can probably expand upon this in a way.
Yeah.
Is that if there's someone, if we have a representative on the PD committee and they're involved in preparing some of this professional development.
Absolutely.
Then there's also some ownership to go back to people and say, hey, we've got this really fun workshop that we're gonna be doing. I think it would be really useful for people to come. But we would also be able to then have some more data as to how many people are taking advantage of the option.
Right.
To then say, well, maybe it makes sense to go to 184 because people are already taking advantage of these great professional development opportunities. And we've got one person, maybe next time we'll have more than one person on it. But until then, it's gonna be really hard for us to get people to commit to an extra 3 days per year with the salary that we're talking about, with that unknown of whether or not those 3 extra days will be useful versus, honestly, a second or third job that they can make more money at.
So in the point, though, of having an ESP on that committee, wouldn't be to do exactly what you're describing, of to have it be useful?
Would be to help push that forward.
But Rich, I would argue it's not necessarily like a light switch, right?
Sure.
It's like a cog that takes a while to get moving.
Yeah.
And I think that's what she's trying to make, and then eventually
Right,
it's going
because
to entice people to really
there's
wanna
a
go.
lag in the planning versus the implementing, obviously. So you plan, I don't know how it works, but you plan a certain number of months in
Yeah, of
advance,
course.
kind of thing.
Of course.
And so if, say, adding a person works, right, so they would be added, so like September.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm pretty sure up until Thanksgiving is mostly planned. So there would be no opportunity to influence the schedule up until November at least. And so those days, however many we have, 2.5? I think we have 2.5 up until then, would be in the same situation they're in now. So there is kind of this slight lag in the planning versus the implementing part, just in the way the year works.
Can I ask a question? If anybody knows the answer to this? ESPs have had the opportunity, if they wish, to attend PD
Yeah.
for the whole cycle of this current contract. Does anyone know how many of them have attended those?
I think
That's a handful.
one, it would be very few.
Very few.
Have you received feedback from the few about so it's unfortunate, we don't really have a information source to inform us as we sit here today about how useful it actually is lately. We have folks who I think have attended years ago, but it doesn't seem to me we have any current knowledge base about how useful it is lately.
I think to go to Dina's earlier point, there are descriptions given of the PD that we like go to, which is what, when most ESPs see, like, can go to PD, what they're looking at is.
Well, we're not really invited in most of them.
Right.
There's nowhere that says AIDS
Or
or
ESPs.
ESPs.
Contract says that you have the option of attending.
We do have the option, but I'll give you an example, like the last November 7th PD, and it's just the first one that came out. The participants are all pre-K staff, okay? Then K through 4 classroom teachers, MSNTs, reading specialists, literacy, coaches, ELL, nothing about ESPs. And then it goes to grade 5 and 6, reading and ELA and ELL teachers. And then it goes to 5 through 12 faculty and unified arts. There's nothing there about ESPs.
Well, it doesn't list ESP, the position, right? But I wonder what the topics actually were that were being.
But that's what I mean,
Invited.
that's a PD day, and there's nothing on there that we're invited to
And there's nothing.
go to. It says participants. I was told quite a while ago that it'll say ESPs if we're invited to that PD.
No, that we had.
Well, that's how
we
it
would have
always
E-
was, because there wasn't room for us in all the PDs, so we had to look for.
Sometimes.
Yep,
I'm in it now.
I'm feeling like that's probably my mistake
it's okay.
as I'm sitting
It's
here,
not the first
because
time.
I can vouch, I mean, I know in looking at past PD plans, Brenda outlined it very differently than I did, and it always said, I mean, I saw all of the past ones. So I'm sitting here feeling terrible because that was never, ever, ever the intention. I always knew that it was just optional for you guys, so.
In the
But
past, I
that's
think.
totally on me. That's not, it's
And
not a
I
district
apologize
practice.
for calling you out on it because I just picked a day.
Yeah,
So
no,
I-
that's okay.
No, no.
I'm happy to own
It
it.
would be a little more inviting or signaling like,
I just went
you
to
know,
the first day
you're
that came out.
obviously welcome to attend these, and you
Yeah.
may look at the actual topics and say, and you may look and say, oh, wow, yes.
Exactly. Usually, in your defense, usually there's a little line at the bottom that says ESPs. And it's one thing that we can go to. And most times, if you've been here 20, 25 years, it's not really valuable to you.
Or it's through HR.
Right,
And so then it's
right.
like, well, it's not really our
So-
PD type thing.
Well,
It's a hard
Delta would
sell
be,
to make
yeah.
us work 100,
Yeah.
for us as union reps to say, okay, we're going to agree to work 184 and go to PD now.
Because they do see the description of what we go to, and it hasn't been appealing, because as we sit here, I'm pretty sure I only know one person who goes. So in that respect of the whole, like, yes, they see that it's, I'm just gonna pull one out of my head, but vision of a learner. They see that, there is usually like a description vaguely of like what will happen, that kind of thing. Or you could ask, hey, what'd you do with vision of a learner? And there'd be, people could tell you. And it hasn't been appealing enough for all of the ESPs on this committee. None of us can actually like name someone who goes readily, or none of them have gone. So I think that kind of goes to the appeal part of it.
Okay, so my concern with the proposals thus far is this. As with the step-up situation, the committee, if they agree to your language, has to wait 3 years before they can introduce a change to the contract language. If we agree to the way that you've structured it here.
Well, it could be countered to not require the whole 3.
Well, we did. With the step-up language, we agreed that we would use the first year as a data collection year. And if the data collection showed that we were a solution in search of a problem that doesn't exist, the language would never be implemented. So we thought that our way of handling it was meeting your concerns.
I'm also looking, just if it helps, and I'm happy to share these grids in total, because this is where we pulled the topics from. I'm looking at 22, 23, and I'm looking at, let's just pick November 1st, and it says AIDS optional, yes, all the way down. The only one that wasn't optional to the AIDS was the nurses. And then there was, in fact, crisis prevention, intervention training, open to our aides, and open to Delta THR, Precision HR. If we go to the year before, same thing, and that happens every date of the PD. And I think that's what you're referring to, the potential you didn't see this year in the similar grid. However, for the life of this contract,
But
2
I
out of the
remember
3.
parts
Yep.
when we were only invited to one thing.
Well, I mean,
I mean,
again.
in the year you look like the year I looked, I apologize.
I mean, I think it depends on each, it really does depend on each session. And then I will say this year, I know for a fact that some of the aides went to EL. or science of reading, interesting to their grade level. That wasn't offered at every grade level. So I think it's a varied, differentiated approach from year to year in what's available out of the 8 sessions.
I also think the point is that we're trying to move forward.
Yeah.
So, and having a more interactive approach to PD by having the committee. So in terms of the line about adding, the only concern would be is that the PD committee isn't exactly official. It's not in the contract. So I don't know.
I think
you
too,
could-
speaking for myself personally and possibly for Rich, I think the intention overall with ESP development, learning, support for your role, for your job, was to show that there's value for what you do. And with that means giving you the prep time that you need to work with the educators and giving you the training and more support in whatever way that is. So there's an expectation, at least on my end, that when we see the PD forms come through at the school committee meeting, I do look to see that there's some differentiation. I do look to see some of the feedback that I've gotten from specialists and things like that in the district that say it's a waste of my day if it's, based on this certain topic. And I am starting to see that there is a lot more differentiation. So my expectation would be, when I see that form, what are you expecting the ESPs to do on these days? So I don't know if you're saying use trust in that way, but I think there needs to be some sort of a collaborative approach, whether it be on the committee or in some other way, that there's a voice for ESPs to have the training that you need, because that's what it comes down to, is you getting what you need, not just filling time. So, and that would be my expectation for the
And
administration.
I feel like we're doing the committee as kind of a best practice type of thing. So absolutely.
And the teachers have seen, like, this year, PD has been there's been improvements since that committee has been diligently at work. And so we thought.
It's
the
been
ESPs
so
felt-
helpful, yeah.
Yeah, so the ESPs felt confident that having somebody on there, it would be recognized, like it would be
Absolutely.
helpful.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing is you want a voice in this process.
Right.
And I can support that.
Which means it's not, thank you. So the concept of PD days isn't off our table. We just want to make sure that there is some kind of system to making sure that when they're attending, it is meaningful and it's not like kind of catch-all or thrown in or something like that. Because they do have specialized roles in classrooms. And we did look at the type of PD that's being, I guess I'll use the word piloted at the Heathbrook. And we did think that it looked like a good base mark for entry-level ESPs. Obviously, currently, right now, it's not being done as a professional development so much as it's being kind of put in where it can be, obviously, because of the scheduling. But something like that seemed like progress in and of itself. So we can see the pieces of planning. We just want to make sure that it continues and that ESPs have a voice in that planning.
Yeah.
Moving forward,
I got you.
if we're committing to the other days and things.
Okay.
I understand.
All right, so we can all go back and talk. and come
Yeah.
back. Okay.
All right, so then the next thing on would be tuition. So same article, just down one. So 38. So we think we found, or we hope we found kind of a middle. So we've previously kind of already agreed to the changes in the overall amount for the year and that kind of thing. We did have one. Heather, you have a question? Wait, where's? Heather, do you have your question?
Oh, we were just wondering if you had any information on how many ESPs actually take advantage of the tuition reimbursement, if there's a number. You may not know right now, but if we could be.
There is a number.
And it's, again,
I can
it's
tell you that.
Confident there would be a number.
Okay.
a small handful, if that makes sense.
Because we talked about it when we did the teacher reimbursement one, so we're curious what it looks like on the ESP side as well.
Sure.
And then we went back and we looked at, our interest in being able to kind of go in for more than one course and obviously the money differential. And so currently ESPs have the option to take 3 courses, so we would be willing to change it to 2 if for each time around per year with a payment up to $1,000 on the first come, first serve, that type of thing. So that would still take into account that if an ESP is on the teacher track, they need to take more than one course per year, but this would still be more beneficial than the current 750. Kind of an in the middle. And then if those funds are not used up, much like the kind of teacher look at things, that there would be some kind of notification that there were funds left in the pot. So if somebody was thinking about taking a course, they could.
I think on that point, and I know we talked about the teacher side of it last go around. I think part of what's happening too is that Mr. Libby is having to chase people. Someone will create a purchase order basically to say, hey, I'm going to sign up for XYZ course and it's going to cost XYZ dollars, right? And so then the closing of that purchase order doesn't get closed because either the teacher didn't do it or the professional didn't do it or forgot to do it or just didn't have time to go do it because it was a self-paced course of sorts, right?
Okay.
And so there's a lot of kind of following up that Mr. Libby is already doing to kind of chase people to say, hey, you opened this, you wanted to do this, did you do it? We don't know because you haven't closed it out yet. And so I think that kind of goes two ways a little bit where we can, and I don't want to speak for Mr. Libby here, but I don't know the mechanism that he uses today to do that, but I know that was something that was brought up sort of on the flip side as well.
No, that's good to know. Is that?
Yeah, sometimes when especially when they're, real early if we get POs like from July and August, I think, I forgot to even put in, hey, I was going to take that class, and then just sometimes life happens.
Just doesn't pan out.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
And then you have not tied up loose
we're usually the assistant superintendent's secretary kind of organizes all that. So they're following up, finding out if the course is going to happen or not. So that can be a little bit of a back and forth, and we want to use it all before the end of the year and make sure they're going to happen. So it's been a bit of a, pain is not a real big, not a great word, but a little bit of a hassle at times.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you for that.
Catching folks to find out. And if they're not going to take it, great. We'd like to wipe it out and let someone else get in there. So.
Okay, that's
So
good
the
to know.
interest
Can I ask?
is there overall. There seems to be a lot of interest. We weren't too sure.
From
A lot of interest from ESPs, or if it's just a select few that are using that.
It's a few. It's a
Benefit?
few. I had a clarification. Because Emily, you said if an ESP is on a teacher track.
Correct.
Is that why we're looking, is it because we're looking for the degree status, ESP looking to be, because we had discussion around that?
Well,
If there should be parameters that are different for someone who is,
Well, I think our idea wasn't that there'd be different parameters, but there has been how do I say this? It seems as though a lot of the ESPs that are hired are looking to becoming educators.
Yeah.
And younger workforce and things like that, that does seem to be the route people would like to go. And so we did look at the idea that this might be enticing because they're like, oh, like if I'm still working towards getting my degree, like this would be beneficial. And then we would be more likely to have that person come here and work for us and have that person stay here maybe for the duration of their degree or whatever it is they're doing. And then it kind of creates a little funnel in if we need a staff member or something like that. So that's kind of one of the reasons why the tuition piece is important for us, because we have noticed that, and where it is difficult, across the country, people getting into education, maybe this would be a little of I can take more classes here this year, something like that. Does that make sense?
it does, and actually, in answer to your question, mostly the people who access tuition reimbursement are seeking a degree. I mean, the ones in my memory, and I'm sure Lori will nod her head the same, that are looking. Otherwise, people aren't really seeking to take a course. It's for that degree, whether it's school psychologist or whether it's teacher or special education.
Exactly. Thank you.
Can I just clarify one thing too? The I'm sorry, I forget your name, the business manager.
Mr. Levy?
Dave.
From Monterey.
Thank you. Anyways, so we also had a proposal for both Unit A and for the ESPs here of giving some sort of a notification to the association by April 1st of funds that were unused. Would it be helpful at that point to kind of delineate it as like, these are the funds that have been already set aside for people, but we have yet to receive, the grades to give the reimbursement, and then this is the pile of money that's been entirely unrequested. And then, maybe if there are 2 dates, I'm not gonna put out an official proposal, but if there are 2 dates, that might also be helpful for the association to kind of see, well, 10 people requested this in June, but they still haven't put in, their reimbursement request or their grades. Maybe we can put that out to the membership as well.
Yep.
Okay. I put on my list to talk about.
Okay. All right, so then I think, although I'm going to go back and check really quickly, but I
That
think,
actually wouldn't be too hard to figure out. We could see what was actual and what was on a purchase order still. Just 2 numbers would be pretty easy to do.
okay, so then I think I'll go back and check one more time, but I think the last thing then, we're on page 40, is the duties language. So we were going back and forth, but we think we came up with something that may work. So it says for grades pre-K through 12, okay, they'll be given a minimum of 60 weekly minutes for the planning time, just so that everyone can account for it, right? And then the number of duties for an individual ESP will be equal to the number of duties for an individual teacher at the assigned building. So at different buildings, they have different number of duties depending on what's going on. So if a teacher has 2 lunch duties a week, an ESP could be assigned 2 lunch duties a week. If they have 5 bus duties a week as a teacher, you could have 5 bus duties a week as the ESP. So we would just match whatever the teacher allotment is. But that it would exclude any ESP assigned to a DLC, as well as any ESP assigned to a student who rides the van and/or requires lunch or recess supervision, because they're essentially already doing all of those duties. Because if they're assigned to a DLC van or bus student, then they're with that kid the whole time, so they're already doing a duty. Does that make sense? So we don't want them added to a schedule that then they have to be like, oh wait, I have to go with this kid. And there are certain students who need lunch and recess supervision the whole time. So that was our thought, and that then it would even.
Can I just get clarity on that? So are you talking, when you say this, are you referring to sort of the whole pool versus an individual ESP or an individual teacher?
So, can you restate the
So,
question?
yeah, so if all the, I'll use the Ryan School, for example. If all the duties at the Ryan School have 5 teachers assigned on any given week, 1 a day, let's just say, for lunch, are you saying that there only can be 5 duties allocated to ESPs
No, it would.
for the week as well?
Our idea is that it would be individual. So like I,
Okay.
at the Win, do like 1 lunch duty a week.
Sure.
So that, and all of the classroom teachers do 1 lunch duty a week.
Yep.
The specialists might do 2. So
Yep.
let's say the specialists do 2 for the argument.
Sure.
That's the max number that a teacher is assigned for lunch duty at that building. So then that would be the max number any ESP could be assigned. So the numbers would be equal. It doesn't mean that like only 2 ESPs can be assigned. It's that the individual ESP only gets assigned 2 lunch duties during the week at max.
Can you explain the justification for that?
So, yes, so a lot of the times ESPs end up being place fillers, and they just pick up all the slack for whatever the teacher contract isn't allotting. And so the fear is that if we go to a 7-hour day, that is just going to be constant duties. And it would wind up being unequitable to the teacher staff in the building, because, we might have homeroom duty, or you might not have something that semester. It changes throughout the buildings. So our idea is if an ESP and a teacher are working in the same building, their duty responsibilities, or I'll use the term like caseload, I guess, should be could be equivalent. And that way, everything should be covered, like mathematically, we think everything should be covered, but it will avoid maybe an individual ESP ending up with 5 or 8 bus duties in a week when a teacher may have 2 or another ESP has 2. Like, we're trying to go for equality amongst the ESPs, but also then with the teacher staff. Because what we don't want is the ESPs ending up doing like a ton of duties to just.
Okay, so can I just, I need to get clarity with this then, because the point of the role of an ESP is to be there for supervisory duty for a student, correct?
Or the prep time allotment during that time.
Right. So to compare the ESP role to a teacher role, first of all, doesn't make even an iota of sense to me, if I'm being honest, number one. Number two, just take the high school, for example. A high school teacher has an average of 97 minutes of prep time based on data that we showed earlier in our negotiating meetings. An ESP isn't getting 97 minutes a day of prep time.
Right.
So it doesn't stand to reason that a high school teacher is going to have the same amount of supervisory duty time that an ESP at the high school would. So how can you even relate the two or compare the two? It doesn't make sense.
Well, just because the ESP is not assigned a duty doesn't mean that they're like not doing something. So my ESP right now isn't assigned a morning because the hours and all these things.
Sure.
But when she's in the building,
Sure.
they're making copies for us, making packets for us. They're running things downstairs for the kids. Their so-and-so needs to go do his check-in. They are doing things.
Sure.
It's just not a duty. I understand it's not, as was laid out here, breakfast duty. But if so-and-so needs to end up at the office at 7:05, like 7:40 every day to do something, I might need the ESP to do that. It's supervisory in nature, I suppose. It's certainly helpful. It certainly helps the progress of the day for the students and for the teachers, but it's not something that you would call a duty. And in some respects, depending on the building, because I know little kids are different, but there's certain tasks that they may do and that they may need to complete that's more important than standing in the hallway making sure traffic flows on the right side. And so we're trying to make the most of this time and making sure it's not just filled with, are you watching the kids walk across the sidewalk? Because that can be very important, but there's a lot of things. There's a lot of like tasks and little minute things and stuff they have to catch up on in the morning. Who am I taking where? Does this team want me to pull kids for the math test? What am I doing during focus block? This student is absent, but that means I'm going to change my schedule, blah, blah, blah. There are a lot of things that have to be decided,
Understood.
especially in the morning. And so if every single morning is taking up with, let's just say, bus duties, just because there's nothing in your contract limiting them, then that's not really helpful. That's not necessarily.
Of course it's helpful.
Can I just ask, who is with the students and supervising them when they're on the sidewalk, or when they're in the hall, or when they're at, I guess I would just ask.
He's assigned.
I understand, but, so right now at the Ryan and the Wynn, the teacher does one lunch duty a week, but the aides, or the ESPs supervise more than one lunch duty a week. And at the high school teachers do one lunch duty every 7 days. And I'm just curious, if we don't have the ESPs to supervise students, who's doing it? I mean, that right now, our 7-hour HR Precision aides, we have them for 7 hours for supervision time, wherever we need them. I'm just curious who's doing that.
So, just real quick, the HR aides aren't necessarily there supervising children during lunchtime. In fact,
we can
found that
use them in whatever way. We can use them to supervise. That's the contract.
perhaps you can, but I'm just being honest with you, they're not being utilized in that manner. Secondly, I think we're going down this road in terms of an aide's role being purely like supervisory. That's not true. I mean, the aide's major purpose is to assist the teacher in order to make sure IEPs are being enforced, making sure that students with special needs have their needs met. So,
Not the only job of the
I'm not saying it is, but I think my point here is, if we go down this road where there's no language in the contract to protect how many duties that an aide could have, It may be out of convenience. It may be just purely the simplest way to get it done, but we're going to push them more to a duty job than what they're mostly needed for, which is to support those special ed kids.
I know the word duty keeps coming out. It really is support. It's supervision and support. And an ESP's position, in my opinion, is to support students. And some of that is unstructured support. And there's where our students, especially for the majority of our ESPs, our special ed students need that support and supervision the most.
Some of the time, in that particular case. And I think the word some here is the point that we're trying to make, is that we need to make sure there's some level of protection for aides to make sure that some doesn't become most or always. And that's really what we're looking for in this case. I would tell you this, I feel that my aide is better situated in my room supporting me with my students with high needs than standing in front of the door and making sure kids are coming in and going up to class. That could be a personal opinion of mine, but I would stand by that opinion all day long.
Because it's also not to, I feel like there's this minor picture that there's a difference between different ESPs have different, essentially, like numbers of kids they're assigned to, right? There are the classroom ESPs, which are right now like the unit members, and then there's what you call one-to-one or a shared, so they're like just one adult to one kid or one adult to maybe two kids. When we're talking about duty time, and we're talking about this unstructured time, if I'm a classroom ESP, I'm not with okay, where are the 8 kids that I'm with in science? Let's all walk to gym. Like, that's not what it looks like. It's still all the kids are coming into the lunchroom, all of them. It's still all of the kids are going through the line. Still all of the kids are at recess. It's not as though, I suppose, unless you are a one-to-one, and even then, like, I don't know if anybody wants their ESP like sit next to them at lunch. It might be a little awkward, but there isn't this, you are watching everybody. The ESP assigned to lunch duty is watching the lunchroom. They're not just there for their 8 students. When an ESP or a teacher is assigned to bus duty, I'm not just watching for the 7A kids coming off the bus, I'm watching the mass of students. So to say that they're there doing this at duty, to say anybody who isn't necessarily like a one-to-one is doing this like intricate work with a student is inaccurate.
Nobody's saying that.
Nobody's saying, you're right. It's supervisory duty of all students, or any student, whatever the need might be at that particular time.
And each building is different, each day is different.
Which is why we made it where we were envisioning it being per building, because we understand that they're all a little bit different. And I know that we do different numbers of lunch duties and whatever than the Ryan might, or the high school, things like that. And that's why we thought the principals would be the best to come up with, well, what does that equality look like? And right now, they're doing it with with the ESPs doing, what is currently getting by, as seems sufficient. There hasn't been anything we know of that's been catastrophic or anything with that. So increasing their workday, possibly tripling their duties, just seems, to Josh's point, out of convenience, whereas we're looking for something that is equitable and something that gives all of their time value, whether it is supervising or whether it's prepping for the day or prepping for a class or getting ready for the next day if it's at the end of the day, something like that.
So I have two questions. One, just for clarification, I'm a little bit blindsided to hear you say you want equity with teachers and ESPs in terms of having supervisory time. Because I've been advocating, as has Rich, to try to hear you in saying that prep time's a priority, all these other things. And so to make everything work, everybody might be in a different place at a different time to make it work. So that's hard for me to now wrap my head around a little bit. But the second thing, things that are happening in the district that we hear from families, we hear from students, they're sitting on buses for a long time in the morning. And, we hear issues about breakfast. We hear issues about, kids shouldn't be idling for 20 minutes on a bus. No, they shouldn't be. So we're advocating to fix that in some way. So if it's not working now, we need to advocate for it to be fixed. And so I'm not presuming to know the answer. I just am really good at pointing out the problems. So.
That is a skill, that is a skill.
So when I present that to administration and I say, it can't keep happening. We have to fix this. We have to find a solution. Some of that comes with that is duties, and that might be at one school and not another. So just to give you a little insight from where I come from and what I'm advocating for is just for students to get what they need. And I think that's where you're coming from at the same place.
Yes.
We have to find that middle ground because students right now aren't getting what they need.
Can I just ask, and I don't know if that's what you were getting at, but I don't understand how kids being on buses for 20 minutes idling, how we would help that even if we did a duty every day.
Well, if your day
The
begins a
buses
little
don't come into
earlier.
the school till a certain time.
If your day began a little bit before students arrive and ended a little after students leave, that might help.
How though?
You're
and
available.
I'm not being fresh.
No,
I'm
I- yeah.
I'm really serious here. Like if my day was 8:30 to 3:30, the children aren't allowed off the bus till 8:30.
That's part of the problem.
That's part of the
So,
problem.
And they're
so in
sitting
other
on-
words, you would put us there at 8:15 to take all those kids off the bus and put them somewhere. Which doesn't make sense to me because we have Alphabet in the schools. Where would?
They're not in every
really-
school. They're not in every school. There are schools that don't have
Okay,
alphabets
the
where
older
kids are
do
idling.
not, right. But
Yeah.
where would, now the aides are responsible for maybe 100, 200 kids getting off the bus early. I think that's a lot to ask, to do
So-
something
so-
with them for 15, 20 minutes.
But Joanne, right now, those kids are, I sat there the other day, 13 buses unloaded simultaneous, while every single car in the line unloaded simultaneously. I made the example of saying it was like Walmart on Black Friday. I couldn't even believe it. So if that's happening now at a certain time, why couldn't buses stagger how they let kids off? Let them come in, grab their breakfast, have a few minutes to just set their executive functioning or whatever. I'm not going to pretend to be an educator, but what I am going to say is I'm a parent and I'm somebody who listens to families, and I think there's a better way.
Oh, I agree with you.
I'm not gonna
I
tell you
just-
the
I
way,
don't-
but I'm telling you I
can't
think there's one.
Picture it, but I do
Yeah.
get where you're coming from.
I just wanted
Please.
to bring something up. And again, our goal is to be there for our students. Working in a DLC, I am with my student, I'm a van monitor with my student. So from 6:40 a.m. until 2:25 p.m., I am with my student. And the only time I am away from my student is for my 25-minute lunch, or if I need to use the ladies' room. That's it. But having been a monitor this whole year, I have found extremely enlightening when it comes to transportation, time on buses. There's paving going on in Whipple Road. There's a water main break here, there, everywhere. There's snow on the ground. And a bus has had a catastrophic accident. There's all sorts of things that we can't plan ahead for, and how much time the kiddos are spending on the bus between leaving their stop and then having to sit and wait. And again, as you know, Joanne mentioned, are we gonna have them offload earlier and stagger the release from the buses? I understand at the Wynn, yes, it's like the salmon spawning. The bus doors open. And sometimes when they see, we try to offload our students about 5 minutes early in case perhaps someone's having a bad morning and we just want to get them in the building. And sometimes kiddos see us offloading and they want to get off. So, we're more than willing to work with how much time is spent on the bus, how much time the kids are sitting idle. But there's just so many factors that you can't factor in.
And Kelly, I completely understand that there are extenuating circumstances where a bus may arrive earlier than typical because the route went less and shorter, whatever.
Traffic at
I understand that. I just think if, we're now in April and this has been a consistent since the bus schedule gets straightened out in September, so I'll give you the end of October till now. And I just think, I put that out there as you guys do this every day too. You are probably better at problem solving some of this stuff than I am, of course. I'm just, like I said, good at bringing to you the problem.
The scary thing too for the ESPs is the word duty, because again, if I have a duty somewhere, I don't know, I'm in a DLC, I don't know how the inclusion aids work. I haven't done it for 10 years, I've been in the DLC. But it's like if an ESP is given a duty, the question I have is, who's with their student or students?
Right, you can't be in two places at once.
Right, you can't, but already, do we have enough staffing to begin with? And then you're gonna pull ESPs for duties, which is gonna take even more staffing away from, like, who's gonna cover?
Right, I think the idea, part of the idea, there's many pieces to how to make this work, and it's probably never going to be perfect, trying to make it better. Part of the idea is if you're present for more time, you're getting paid for it, obviously, you get paid for all the hours you're there. That would allow you to still be with students, but also be available to help get them into school and get them out of school, get them to lunch, get them away from lunch. The way that we like to see language so that it works, the contract is applicable in a functional, not a dysfunctional way to all the different buildings, is that duties will be assigned equitably. Meaning, if you're with a student your whole 7-hour day, obviously you're not available to do any supervisory duties for any other kids except the one to whom you are assigned. So the equitable distribution of duties would probably exclude you from duties because in essence you already are doing them just with one student.
Right.
But there may be someone else who is more available and therefore may, given the equity consideration, might be given more duties.
But define more available. If an ESP isn't available, I can definitely see an ESP willing to do a duty.
Right, if they are with students 6 hours, 20 minutes, except their lunch, that leaves 40 other minutes a day, except the time we promise to carve out at a minimum to have them be able to prep or plan. They're available potentially for all the other time that's not in the student day. Does it mean that every ESP is going to be loaded up with duties for every single minute? I highly doubt it, right?
But how much time, I guess I'm asking,
Right.
is where is all this time coming from?
The extra time that they're now there within the 7-hour workday.
Right, but
Except folks that already are with students.
Well, that's the option is the van or bus monitor. That's not a
Right,
given that everybody would
person
do
is already
that.
otherwise occupied. I think you have come to know that these folks know you can't, again, you can't be in two places at once. And you're being promised a minimum of 60 prep minutes or planning minutes per week, except on shortened weeks or days, obviously. That's a minimum.
Can I just ask a quick question? Bridget, I'm sorry if you said it. What school did you see that at?
One of the middle schools.
Yeah, it happens.
Probably ours.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, well, because
It was an accurate description. I'll give you that.
I mean, I'm not.
I'm just
really
asking
trying-
because that's not how it works at the Heathbrook.
I think
So
because
like,
of the way
this
you
is
drop
very
off, yeah.
different depending on what building you're at.
And that's, and as I listened to Kelly, I kind of reconciled that as well. You're right, it's not the same everywhere.
Right, and we will recognize, and I know from a teacher perspective, we have recognized issues with the way that things work, and breakfast on the scale it is right now is different than it has been in past years because of all the meal changes and whatnot. So, that is new. And there are definitely some, bumps to be worked out and things like that. I think our fear is that instead of it being kind of a holistic look, it's we have the ESPs. And so we want to make sure that if there is a solution to, I'm just going to use, as you did, in the morning, right? If there's a solution to be had there, how does that function holistically and not just, we have the ESPs now in the morning? Because I agree with you, at least when the morning is a lot. And it's a lot for staff, it's a lot for the admin, it's a lot for the kids. We get that. And I think that as a problem-solving kind of way, staff would be willing to look at that without it being we have the fallback of the ESP's time, I think is what we're trying to balance out.
At the end of the day, we're just trying to say, hey, out of a 7-hour day, minus the 6 hour and 20 minutes, minus the 25 minutes that you're on lunch, minus the 6 hour and 20 minute day that you're already with students for whatever tasks that you may be doing with those students, whether it's one-on-one or in a classroom in general, the other 40 minutes per day, 20 before, 20 after, is going to be used to carve out an hour of prep. And then the rest, what else would you be doing other than doing some form of supervisoring of students during some form of unstructured time? Like, that's what I'm not clear on. We keep saying, well, we don't want to get piled up on these supervisory duties. We keep using it like it's a 4-letter word. The intention is to supervise students for whatever the need for that particular day or that particular student might be. So what else would you be doing?
Academic things. Sure. Prepping, reading.
Well, I've already carved that out. I've already carved that out.
You carved out 60 minutes.
At a minimum.
Okay, which it will definitely be 60 minutes.
It will definitely be 60 minutes.
I've been around a long
To
time.
the best of admin, it will
Okay.
be 60 minutes.
Then, we got a new EL program.
Okay.
Right? They're reading Peter Pan.
Sure.
I go in to help them. I have no idea what Peter Pan's about, because this room I read chapter 1, this room I heard them reading half of chapter 6, this room they read chapter 17, but I didn't hear the whole thing, and now I'm going in and trying to help those special ed kids
Sure.
navigate their workbook.
Sure.
If I had a little time in the morning, not 60 minutes for the week, because I don't know where we're going to be, and hopefully I'm catching up with teachers, I could get that book and read.
So then what I'm hearing you say is that 60 minutes isn't enough. Is that what I'm hearing?
You need time every day. If we were hired as educational support people, we're hired to help educate. Yes, we supervise, but we were hired to help the neediest population.
Sure.
And we're not doing our job as well as we could the way it's being done now. And that's just life. We need time to prepare every day. We can't.
Well, that wasn't the
be
counter,
thrown
though,
into the
Joanne. Joanne, that wasn't the counter, though.
That was not the counter.
So
but
that's what I'm trying to understand.
Explain why we're asking to be limited on duties. It's not considered prep time, it's considered part of your day to get ready. So if you want to consider it prep time, okay.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
We can do that.
Sure.
We know prep time's a hard sell. And you know 7 hours is a hard sell.
Sure. Sure.
So you're asking us to do 60 minutes of prep and then 140 minutes of duties, as we'd like to call them, okay? But you're not giving us time to prepare for what we were actually hired for, which is educational support. It's not to supervise children in unsupervised areas. That's not
Disagree.
why we were originally hired.
Disagree.
I disagree with that, Joanne.
Okay, well, I'm explaining.
That's the name.
That is the name, and that's
Supporting
how
the
job-
children.
The job has evolved into being everywhere, but we were hired to support those kids, and I don't feel I'm supporting them as best I can without having time every day to look things over.
That's a fair point. That's an absolutely fair point.
And when you have, to date, for example, during my focus block, our ESP pulled, I think, 13 kids total, okay? But of those 13 kids, they were actually doing 4 different tasks. So that ESP, so let's negate the 7 hours just for a second. So from the moment they walked in, they were going to classes, right? They were doing classes. And then the first time they really got a chance to see like the kids and what they were all doing was as they were walking in 5th block. If they were not, say now we're at 7 hours, they're not assigned a bus duty on Tuesdays. Okay, at least on Tuesday I can come in, I can sit down. Okay, I've got Jimmy, Lucy, Sandy, Eddie coming in to do their math test. And then I get, okay, so I'm gonna put the math kids over here in my room and I'm gonna put the 2 kids that have to make up their reading are gonna go over here. There is some type of planning you have to do for when you pull kids out, when you do this and that. And so having, those 3 days a week where you don't have a duty in the morning or in the afternoon maybe, you could prep for, okay, here's how I'm going to set this up for tomorrow for my team. Okay, I know I need to catch these 3 students who were absent. I know I have to catch them up on reading. So we're going to go to this room. We're all going to read our book. That type of stuff can't always be done in the 60 minutes of prep. And again, we are very optimistic that principals can finagle some of that time to be with the teachers, so that might be for other things. But there is, to support education of students takes some logistics. And so if you had some time at the beginning and end of certain days to do those logistics, everything runs smoother for the kids, it runs smoother for the team, it runs smoother for the academics. And it's more equitable across the board because oh, hey, if you need me to pull 12 kids, how about I pull them on Tuesday? Because I don't have a duty Tuesday morning, and that way I can do this. Those types of things are what we're looking for. Some amount of flexibility as well as taking care of the supervisory duties as you've put it. That's what they're doing in that extra time to support education.
I did want to add just one more component, because we've been talking a lot about, buses in the morning.
Right.
But with the way the language has been crafted, duties is a general term, and it does also, it would include lunch, right? So this idea of, aides being able to take their lunch is very important, right? I think we can all admit that in the middle of a tough day, sometimes it's good to be able to just compress, eat your food, and get back into it, right? So I think with the way the language is crafted, and the reason why we want it to be equitable in this case, is to make sure that aides aren't being kind of slipped into lunch duty more and more often, so that they too can have that time to decompress and be at their best state for their kids.
Okay.
Thank you.
There was only one more thing on the
Yeah.
list.
I was going to say, is this a good time to caucus? But
Well,
or do you have more?
there's just one more thing, which was the appendix, the like stipend parts. That was all, which we can do really quickly. So I'm on page 20 and 21. We did put an updated financial proposal at the end of 19, and then it kind of goes on to 20. So we kind of reworked some of the numbers around a little bit in what we think is might be like more compatible, like ratio. And then we were looking at the stipends. So I'm on, 23, sorry. We got rid of the table. So we're willing to forego most of the stipends that we had requested. We're going to hold on the PM bus duty because that is kind of a connected one on the teacher's route, and there are ESPs who could take advantage of that if it so needs to be used in a certain year. CPI or safety care, we feel very strongly that there's going to be a call for some people to be trained in that, and so we did change that stipend to $2,000. Data collection, we do know comes and goes. You don't do data collection all year. You might do it for a couple weeks or something like that. But we altered that to $25 a day. And then RBT. So you had RBT in as its own scale. We're not sure why. We prefer RBT be like a stipend instead of a scale. I don't know if that makes like a math difference for Dave or what, but we saw districts that did it both ways, and we just thought it was easier to make it a stipend than its own scale. We had already agreed to the van bus monitor part. And so then we're fine with keeping the master stipend at $1,000 as it is right now. We would like to get rid of some of all of the stipulations, because as we do have more people who may be trying to get a degree, trying to move in a teacher route, we want to make sure that they can have that stipend for when they're there for. And then the other ones I think we already agreed to. So anything not on that highlighted list there, we're pulling. I think that's it. And that is it. So if we would like to caucus.
Okay, thank you so much. So what time are we thinking?
Back for
5:43.
And then we'll,
Yeah, 6 is the end. Do you want us to try to get back 5 minutes before?
Well,
It's
do
only
you
10
want
minutes.
more time? We could wrap into the break part.
we could end it, we could come back at 6, and we won't have to take a break. We'll have the few minutes, and we won't need to take, if you guys are amenable to that.
Yeah, and if you need more time, you can text, but we'll aim for 6?
6, yeah.
All right, we'll aim for 6.
All right.
Okay, we're now returning at 6:05 session. And we will, unfortunately, Mrs. DePietro had to go home not feeling well. So we'll just muddle through here. And that would be, I'll turn it over to the teachers.
Aye, okay.
Everybody had enough of a break? That was okay?
Yeah.
All right, okay, great.
I said that for everyone, but I didn't ask, but okay.
You made an executive decision.
Okay, I made some cheat sheets for myself, so we're gonna kind of go, the way I'm gonna go through this is common proposals first. Then we're actually gonna go to our counter to your proposal next, or any responses, and then we'll go through some of our outstanding ones, okay? So if we wanna go to page 1 at the bottom, and that is the protection or subcontracting language. Emily already really discussed that one, so I don't really have anything to comment that further, but just that side letter idea. All right. If we then go down to protection, which would be on page 4, at this point, we're willing to TA that assault language. So page 4, let y'all get there.
Yep.
So we are TAing that assault language.
Okay, great.
Excellent. Going down to page 7, so page 7. All right, this is to do with the parental leave. So, right, I want to just first off say that the counter that the school committee gave us did not go unnoticed, you know, for non-birthing parents such as fathers or what have you, many different scenarios. But the fact of the matter is a lot of people who have children are not people who have even more than 30 sick days right now, right? And people are often running back to work when they're not quite ready. At our closed session on December 7th, Peter Malloy specifically made a very good discussion on that. So we are holding at the 12 weeks paid. This is something that's happening, I think you can probably notice, statewide. And then assignment, we find that right here.
So can I just ask?
Yes, go ahead, please,
So-
yes.
So this was your initial proposal. We obviously had an initial proposal of some sorts. I can't recall what it was, and we've, I want to say, slowly chipped away from our side, making concessions, right?
Did our own proposal.
Right. And so you're saying that you're just going back to your initial and not trying to meet us somewhere in the middle as
You know,
well.
so, yeah, Rich, so the team, we talked about it and talked about all these different ideas to respond. But right now, you know, if you think about it, and once again, not diminishing what the response was.
Sure.
We are looking for paid leave, and right now, outside of sick time, there's still 0 paid leave on the school committee side, and that was our rationale right there.
Okay.
And then if we want to go to page, I think it starts on 9, goes to 10. Page 9 on to 10. And this is the assignment language. Okay, perfect. All right, so we are agreeable to most of what you guys did. We just added that, we just want to, you know, we heard you in regards to the binding aspect, right? Things happen. Student enrollment, what have you, happen, and things will happen out of school principal or superintendent's control because of what's going on over the summer, right? The only thing, so we are amenable to all this language. We are just discussing or asking for after written notification of no less than 10 school days. That would give that person time to at least transition to that role.
Can I ask, I'd ask a clarifying question. I mean, and you noted things can happen over the summer. How would there be 10 school days?
Right, so I think the way we were envisioning this is while they may start still in a role where there are some students they could service, they're then also able to kind of, to the side, on their own time, presumably, prepare for the next role they're doing, so it's not an August 20th disaster tear meltdown. It's, okay, I thought I was teaching second grade MSNT. I'm actually doing grade 4 or 5 and 6 DLC, but at least I have till September 13th, 14th to at least start with this role while transitioning into this new role and learning the ropes of what I'm going to. Because at times, members have been transferred to an entirely different school. That scenario I just gave actually is not a hyperbolic one at all. I had to deal with that with a member 2 summers ago.
Can I just, I'm going to clarify, only because I'm thinking of real situations.
Please.
Last year, we had a teacher who was hired as a developmental learning center teacher. That center did not exist after the end of over the summer, and the teacher was moved to grade 1. Who would the teacher be with? What would the teacher, I mean, we needed the teacher with grade 1 students. How would that play out?
That's a good question. And that's just, but like, I understand what you're saying here, and we're amenable to some sort of idea on how to quelch with this summertime. But right now, as it currently is written, the member could literally be August 26th, get a call, hey, school starts August 28th, and you're actually going to do this, which turns their whole professional world and livelihood upside down. So while I totally hear that concern you're saying, and I frankly don't have an answer for you right now, I think that's kind of where we could discuss what if there's a situation in the summer to protect a teacher's working dignity, but also protecting students and the district's obligation to run that course. Yeah. So now I'm going to jump to the responses to the district. Okay, so we're going to go right on over to page, let me find it. TTA response is starting on page 74. Page 74.
Oh, because we're going to add a column, okay.
So I'm just letting everyone get to page 74 very quickly.
74.
I appreciate the page numbers, however, this time.
Just for your own sanity, I guess, too, I did give you access to the document that you had for commenting.
Yeah.
So you can kind of scroll through that outline easily as well. But a lot of in this one too, we had a lot of proposals that were all addressed in this District 1. So they may be going kind of back and forth, but I tried my best to make it as clear as possible what the individual response was, where it appears elsewhere.
So is that document updated with the newer proposals? Oh, good, great.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so you're going to see we don't have responses at the start time, and here's why. We have a major concern on one of the schools, and while we're amenable to most of the work times, we all had a feeling that when one goes, the whole thing could go, right? Because of the buses and everything. So that's why there's no responses. The one we're very concerned about is the very late day for doing Heathbrook. The later the day goes, the more restless the little kids in those grades you get. There's a lot of logistical things that members have concerns about. To be honest, along with the fact that learning does get harder for, teenagers too, frankly, but especially little kids, right? The later the day goes, they get more restless. There's something to be setting during this time, and members are even concerned with, frankly, let's be real, a lot of teachers in our unit need to pick up their own kids. And Emily and other members at these grade levels have said, I can't teach in this district if we go till 3:40. And as you kind of know from one of our big themes, we're trying to retain these wonderful educators. And if we're going to lose them because of this current logistical thing, that's where we get really concerned, along with the student learning aspect. Emily, do you want to comment on that at all with either fast I said or something of your own?
I just think that there's a number of reasons. I don't know if you want me to go into all of it right now, but it's anything from literal student ability to attend that late, to doctor's appointments, to people who have their own children who would never be able to see their kids' high school games and get their kids to appointments and things like that. I know it might seem like
a small amount of time to you guys when you kind of propose these times, but it's actually a really big time in terms of those lower elementary kids. I will tell you, I'm not asking to get out an hour earlier every day, but the day that we did get out the hour earlier for the eclipse, my kids were with me all day. That last hour is so hard for them. To think to make it even later is honestly scary.
And there is extensive research that was done, I think, across a couple countries on start times for different age ranges of kids. And the later elementary, well, they don't call them elementary, but the later that those primary grades start, the worse performing they are because they just fatigue so much faster post-lunch than the older kids do. And so I think that was something everyone looked at and they were like, 9 a.m. might be fine for them to start learning, but by the time you get to the end of the afternoon, they're just fried.
Done.
So, and once again, we did not respond to this because we're rejecting the whole thing. I just had a feeling that if we're asking to brainstorm, and we could even brainstorm offline for these start times if you'd like. Both teams could talk and then kind of figure it out. I had a feeling if one goes, they all go, because the delicate situation with busing, right? So we didn't want to agree to some things, but then you respond saying, well, now that you did, if these two schools don't go, these buses will not get to this school by this time.
Right.
That was the rationale with that. It wasn't that we didn't have progress with these times. It's just that one, I had a feeling would be the end of the whole
effect.
thing. Yeah,
Yeah,
ripple
dominoing,
effect.
yeah.
Yeah, domino effect, yeah. Do you have any questions about that?
No, makes sense.
No, it makes sense.
Okay. We're going to go to that next page. Page 75, right? Page 75?
I don't think there's anything there.
Oh, you're right, Joe. Just go to the next page, 76. You're right. There we go. Okay. This concerns two things that are highlighted right here. The first one's parent-teacher conferences. So, and before I say, we can talk about how to make this work so it's not maybe a legitimate half day, but the March, April parent-teacher conferences dwindle much more than the November, December ones do. Let's be real. By April, a student's progress, don't get me wrong, there are plenty of students that are on that cusp of whatever benchmark they need to be or that grade to pass they need to be. But there are a lot of students that by April, the fate is pretty much sealed. And parents know that, and it does lead to lower attendance, right? Why not try to fit more parents, especially parents who have non-traditional hour jobs, who can attend the night because they don't have a 9 to 5. They have an overnight. Well, maybe if we had 12 to 2, right, then they can maybe attend. We're flexible with how to make that work, right, because we understand the days. We understand the hours. We absolutely understand that. But is there any way that we can get this to work so we're able to reach out to probably a whole different group of parents than the ones that would come to an evening, but also to reach out to a bigger scope of students so these parents or guardians are informed of their progress at an appropriate time of the year and not at a time of the year where I've had awkward conversations where I say, yeah, the average for quarter 1, 2, and 3 was X, Y, and Z, and their average is they'd have to get 120% for quarter 4 to pass. Well, that's kind of awkward because, thanks, great meeting, you know what I mean? So what can we do to be more proactive on that side? And then the second thing on this one was PLC. The professional discretion and the feedback we got from members, it's so important to them. While I'm very down to get creative on this, the PLC facilitators are professionals in their field. They are not first year, second year, third year teachers. They're often 15, 20 year teachers who now have mastered their teaching so well, they're able to impart it on these younger, maybe non-professional or less seasoned teachers. And they're able to have critical discussion on maybe things they're not noticing. I'll give an example. My department, we talk AI, students writing AI. How do we combat that? Of them just not going to ChatGPT. How do we combat maybe a very niche writing issue we're noticing with this certain year of students? Maybe some blip on the radar happened in one of their grades. Maybe it's a generational thing, but how do we handle that? Right now, we're not able to talk about those very important things to our livelihoods and what we're specialized in. Any questions on that at all?
Can I just go back to the open house
Absolutely,
thing?
yes.
Sorry, I was on the same page, I thought.
Yeah, no worries.
So what you're saying here is you're looking to change the 2 evening open houses to 1 mid-year and then another one of the half days of sorts. Is that what you're?
Yeah, so I probably also used open house. Let me differentiate. Open house is the September.
Yeah, beginning of the school year. You're talking about
Unchanged.
parent-teacher conference specifically.
Parent-teacher conference, exactly, yes.
Okay.
Can I have to clarify something, because something you said, Connor, caught my attention. And that is, you might not be, I just want to clarify, how do you communicate with parents, two-way communication, throughout the school year, outside of parent-teacher conferences? Because I think I heard you say that it might not be till third term that you've talked to a parent about a student's progress.
I know what you're saying, and that's not what I mean. What I mean is actually, some parents don't respond to calls. Some parents don't respond to emails. Some parents are not very reachable. Some parents, though, if they get this email that they can go in and meet a teacher, let's be real. Who am I? A random guy emailing, hi, English 10, and, well, most parents are like, oh, that's my kid's English teacher. There's sometimes, whether it's because of a cultural reason or whatnot, there's a level of disconnect that they've not seen me or been able to really talk face-to-face with me. I've had parents who, even though I've emailed home, ad nauseum, or said, I try calling, I get a line, I get a voicemail, they all of a sudden appear to parent-teacher conferences, and we have a great conversation in person, and I'm like, where have you been? You know what I mean? Which is not, they're busy, right? That you don't know someone else's life, right? So I think this could be an outreach to to parents or guardians who may not be able to do that. So it's not necessarily to say that, this, we don't reach out to them in other mediums. I'm just saying that sometimes other mediums don't work.
Or not only that, but there's scenarios where you have been in contact with this person via email, phone call, prior conferences, whatever it is, and maybe they don't, I don't know if this doesn't happen so much at the younger levels, but where they may not wrap their head around the grades yet, and then it comes to that third quarter, and then they're worried. That's a scenario as well.
And I will say, as someone is at the Win, frequently when we send out, we might have 20 spots for the nighttime conferences, right? And we get, no word of a lie, I think we got 39 responses for spring conferences within 3 days of the sign-up email going out. So obviously we can't take all of those people. So we'd offer, would you like an update email? But some people really do want to come in and see you, and you have a mix. Some people, I just want to put a name to your face. And some people have a list of concerns that they don't want to put in writing in an email, things like that. And so at the Win, we probably have 2-hour-long parent meetings a week. Those people also sometimes can't come in at night. Oh, no, I have to watch my younger child. Oh, no, I have to go here. But I could make 12 on a Wednesday. I'm like, all right, we have a block 12 on a Wednesday, sure. And so if we offered some times in the afternoon, whether it be a true half day or whether it be an early release, something that we want to work out, that way those parents who do maybe work 2 shifts or have a younger child and they're like, I can't get out on that time, but I could meet you, I could come in at 1 if you have an early release. We are opening up a whole other demographic of people we might be able to meet with, and then avoid I couldn't get here until, we were almost halfway or more through the school year. We're really trying to give families more of an opportunity and also crunch them together a little bit so you don't end up stringing it along the whole year. We're trying to make the timing of it better as well.
No, and I appreciate that. I agree. And isn't it also, because I have observed many different ways, but that parents are also can be called in during common planning, can be called in during that extended hour, during the school week, in the day. I think there's multiple opportunities. I'm just worried about more time out of the learning time, right? There are other options in the daytime. And I think the answer is yes, because it definitely in the extended hour and definitely in common planning, but I don't know if that works out if everyone's using it that way.
We understand, and it has been mentioned multiple times, the time on learning. However, if we're trying to truly partner with families, then it's arguable that if I can sit down with you for 10, if we can eat, you know, everyone on my team, if we can sit down with you for 10 minutes each or 5 minutes each and be targeted in the approach, that might do more for your child's learning than being in my classroom for 15 minutes in the grand sea of things. So in that aspect of trying to collaborate with families, especially if they have a different cultural background, or especially if maybe they have a larger family and it's different, you know, there's too many teachers, I can't really keep track of which teacher belongs to which kid, these types of things. It's very different to be able to sit down and say, this is the paper, like this is what I'm talking about, this is how you read Aspen, this is how we do this and that. Those types of things can be invaluable to a family assisting in the learning process.
And honestly, respectfully, the idea of using my common playing time or my prep time for a conference it makes me cringe a little bit. I need that time. I desperately need that time to get ready for the students. So I'd rather do it in that like before morning time or something and not.
I appreciate that, but we also have the extended hour, so every
That's
week.
what I meant by my morning time.
No, I mean the
Right, my
Article
morning,
8
my
section, I
extra
forget
morning
what
time.
it is, and I appreciate the flexibility with parents. I think that's where everyone's going here. I just want to clarify, I believe we already have time in the daytime if you need to schedule those meetings, correct? All year long, so we don't have to.
Is that an
I think
expectation?
I would say we don't have to hinge it on one half day.
I think this is really what comes down to the difference between theory and practice, right? So in theory, that extra hour. Generally, I use that extra hour for extra help for students. So when it comes to what we're talking about, it really is, for time, a zero-sum game. So if we take out of common planning time and we take out of extra help, then we're taking out of something else that also assists students, right? So our goal here is to keep all of that in place while also adding a new avenue for these parents that aren't necessarily able to access what we already have in place. So I hear what you're saying with that extra hour. The contract's very clear, but we're already utilizing it in a way that we feel is best for kids. We want to now add something extra that is also good for kids.
I think the spirit we had in our proposal, maybe 2 proposals ago, was that my thinking was to give you more autonomy, because not every student and not every family needs communication at the same time. You might have a student 3 weeks in and, you know, the house is on fire and you've got to sit down and talk to that family and work with that student. You might have somebody else who's not going to see a slip till the spring or whatever. I'm imagining. This is what I see as parents. So I think the autonomy should be there for you to communicate with parents when it's appropriate. And not every kid needs, you know, 6 or 8 weeks in and 17 weeks in. And so I think that one size fits all doesn't work for anybody.
Right.
So I personally don't like having 2 set days and then there's a lockout and only 6 kids get in at the elementary school and only 20 get in at the middle school. As a parent, as a school committee person, I don't think that it works. So I was hoping to find something that had a lot more flexibility for teachers, for parents, for administrators to then know in some way that just some accountability that you're doing the outreach that needs to happen. Maybe nobody's replying to you. That's, you know, there's only so much you can do, you know, in that way. But that families are feeling that they have that outreach, they have that opportunity, and if they need it, they take it. So I kind of put that back a little bit because I want you to have that autonomy.
Fair enough. So oh, sorry.
I just wanted to say something real quickly. I just know because of this past year, I had a lot of people who wanted conferences, which is great. You know, for the first time since the pandemic, I really saw a lot of people coming back out. But I gave up 2 full weeks of extra help with my kids to accommodate for the overload. Because I do believe in a 10-minute conference. I think less than that it's hard for me. I know other teachers do it. By the time they walk in, hello, I think it's less. And that only gives me 12 that night. So, you know, when you have a group of 22, 23, you have a lot of extras that you have to fit in. So I guess I feel like, you know, I am doing it during that hour, but that is also taking from the kids for the parents for a good cause. I'm all for it. But I do feel like it is a concern of mine still that I do see the parents want to come in and talk, and I want to talk to them, and the time isn't necessarily there in this format. And I love what you're saying about autonomy.
Yeah, I mean, because, you should be, be able to do what you need when it needs to be done, and not just because it's a check the box time.
So we just ask you to consider at least some, whether, if that doesn't, the way right now it is, we ask you to consider some way to restructure this, right? Other districts do have this sort of day part, evening part. So it's not like, we're pulling this out of nowhere. So we just ask you to consider it, but we hear you also. We're going to go to page 77. Page 77. We have two additions. We were very excited to see the Unified Arts addition for the specialists. That is very exciting. We do have two additions we'd like. At the high school level with departments, we wanted to add a PLC for guidance. Our guidance counselors have a very different type of job, very different than our teachers, right? And their own time together, especially when they're trying to run a school with 800 plus students or 750 plus students, and they're working all these different applications, all these different nuanced aspects of their job. I think the practice has been that they've had a PLC, at least, at the onset of PLC especially, we're asking for that to be memorialized. Secondly, for special education, we heard Roseanne's point, but we don't agree with Roseanne's point that special educators don't teach special education. Of course, they don't teach what they're learning of what to do, which is to be special educators. They're not teaching how to become a special educator. I get that point, but they are teaching in very different modes to students with high needs and with many different, many different aspects that are important to them. I'm going to turn over to Jill because she's much more of an appropriate person to talk about this than me for the importance of PLC.
So like Connor said, we already have special education PLC at the high school, and we would really like to see that continue. Especially, we've heard from the district this big push on what is being called SPED chats, which is essentially a special education PLC. Since we both, really see the value in having special educators having that time together, that's something we'd really like to memorialize here.
Questions? I just would say the SPED chat is not specifically a special ed professional learning community, more delivery of case manager
Well, I think
notes. So I think they're totally two different things.
Well, I think what Jill is saying is that the fact that SPED chat has to exist leans to the idea that all of that could be discussed if they had a PLC weekly, then everything discussed in SPED chat, it wouldn't be SPED chat, it would just be their PLC. And then the fact that SPED chat exists at all kind of proves that they need some type of centralized communication and some time to sit down and be like, okay, this is what was said here, okay, here's what we're gonna do. And there has been, in the current model of information delivered in SPED chat, there have been some hiccups in the way information is delivered because they don't have time to go over it. It's often just in like one common doc and things like that. So I think that's the point of mentioning the SPED chat piece. But also, I know that before it was mentioned, they don't teach special education, but in fact they do teach like a lot of subjects. Several special education teachers at the WIN right now are teaching 5 subjects because they have 2 collabs, two like small groups, so that's math and ELA, but at 2 different levels. A reading class and then academic support. Reading and academic support both require planning, and they may require specialized skills that only other special ed teachers know about, or programs that only another special ed teacher knows how to run, or knows how to how does this data actually work? Where is it on this scale? And those are things they can only really understand by talking to each other. And the only real time for them to do that right now is in the hallway, or if 2 just so happen to have prep at the same time. Whereas if they had PLC, that would be an opportunity for them to talk about that. Or if the special education department is like, hey, we found this new program. Can you guys look at this new program and tell us what you think? Right now, they're all doing that piecemeal. Whereas if there was a PLC for it, they could say, oh yeah, we're all gonna sit down 2 weeks from now on our Tuesday PLC, we'll sit down and we'll figure out this, we'll get back to you on the program. Those types of things are happening now, but they're all over the place. They're piecemeal, it's a mess.
And I would just say too, right, the MCAS scores came out, and there's a big area we're dealing with is high need students growth. Special educators are the key to helping regular educators with modes of teaching or accommodation that maybe they've never thought about, and them talking together, looking, whether it's at that data and seeing, okay, what specifically is it, what aspects of literacy is it, that could really be good for them. So there's a lot of aspects, especially with, some new or short/long-term goals of our district. Special educators having a PLC seems like a no-brainer.
So I have a question. Is this, you would want, because I imagine that, thank you for allowing us to attend PLC, because it gives us a little frame of reference. So I imagine that you come together as your team, whether it be your grade level or your team like you're doing at the WIN or whatever. Your special education PLC, that person would still participate in the Gen Ed PLC, correct? Or they would just not at all participate in
I
the
don't
Gen
think
Ed
I think the way we currently would do is they'd be in their own group, and then whatever they're talking would then go work with that regular teacher and with whatever's being discussed. And they might report back what's happening in their classroom with other special educators to then collaborate on modes to help maybe that niche issue going on with that regular teacher, not issue with the
So
regular
would
teacher.
that second grade special educator who's not now participating in grade 2 PLC and is only participating in special ed PLC, are they missing content by
Yes,
not
and
being in the
that's,
two?
exactly. And
I'm just,
I really want to say the last comment you made about the special educator providing some content modification or accommodation to the, let's say, grade 2 teachers is critical. That's the work of the PLC. It's around student data-driven achievement and instructional planning for those students. What I'm hearing seems to be a little bit of also prep, common planning. The PLC is a special purpose, and that last comment you made, and I didn't write it down, I wish I did, about that special ed MSNT being in that content-driven decision to understand how to help those high-need students in a different way and understand the content needs is what we were talking about, is why they need to be. Now, I think if I hear correctly, you're also going down the path of maybe some other types of instructional goals an MSNT, needs to discuss with maybe other MSNTs. I think that the priority in a PLC grouping for MSNTs was around content. But not all MSNTs can be at every content PLC when you get in the upper levels. So we see sort of that as well.
So I think to that point, I meet with my science PLC. And then every day I meet with most days, because the parent conference is only things. For most days, I also then meet with my team in common planning. There's nothing to say, and somebody at a different level can correct me if I'm wrong, but if we were doing something cool or something I thought was useful in another subject in the science PLC, nothing stops me from saying at my common planning time, hey guys, this is what we came up with, right? So if you were a special ed teacher and you were at a common planning for a grade or something like that, and they were like, oh gosh, this ELA thing we have to, I'm just gonna use that as, this ELA thing we have to read, I really think we're gonna need to modify it. This is really difficult. There's nothing to stop the MSNT from saying, okay, let me take that from the common planning, let me take that from the teacher. I'm going to bring that to my PLC. We're going to workshop this. How are we best to do that? Maybe it's a benchmark, maybe it's a universal thing. Maybe everybody else is like, oh, we could use this too. Now that we've made this together, this great modified thing, we'll all take it back to our grades. We'll all take it back to our team. Hey, look at what we made. It's modified for these types of levels, these types of students, all these types. So to say that, it's also not exactly true to say that common planning and PLC never touch. They do, and in a lot of very meaningful ways. And I think that's our point of having a special education PLC, is that they can do very specialized, data-driven work. They're all in various contents, depending on the grade level and school and whatnot. They can still do all of that as a group where they're all think tanking in the same way with the same specialized skills. And then they can go distribute it in common planning time, in Google, in however is the best way to distribute it. The same way that I might make something neat for a reading assignment and send it off to Josh in the history department and say, we made this in our PLC, but I think it could work for history. So to say that by adding a special education PLC, we're somehow taking away it's not, I just don't find that to be true. And from what we've heard from members, the special education departments often feel like they're lagging behind in what they have to do for students because they're busy doing what we've been mandated to do in PLCs.
So I think I'm going to go off Emily's point right there, is that the bottom line here is you're hearing this from us. I know Jill did speak for a minute, but this is coming from the special education teachers. And I think if they're not concerned about, as you said, missing that content because they think that they could better do it in a different structure and then come to us during those CPT and planning times, I think that's the bottom line right there, right? They're the ones walking in those shoes that are advocating the need for this time together.
I would also just say, a few of us were at the last negotiation. This was one of those last things that was on the table, right to the very end of it. And because just like this time, we got overwhelming data saying we need this. It's very important to us, and this kind of goes back to Josh's point about theory versus practicality. I understand what's being said theoretically, but in practicality, they feel this time would be more beneficial.
Do you think, and this is, you don't have to answer this, but you could, for consideration, on both ends, is this something that could be a split, a 75-25, a 50-50, just for consideration?
I was kind of thinking that too, like if we could compromise it, maybe some level of
Like X number a month, something.
Right, or every other week, something
I
like
didn't think
that.
about that myself, yeah. Yeah.
Very true.
It might be a little tricky for grade level, but if you'd like to write it, I would love to read it.
I will tell you right now, the way, I agree with Jill, the way 9 to 12 structured it probably wouldn't be beneficial, but for those, whereas MS&Ts at the lower grade levels, that could be something.
I don't even know if that's.
I think it's worth exploring. In the MSNTs at the high school, I understand the structure of co-teaching better, let's just say 8 down. What content areas, is it bio, math, ELA, and history? Where is the co-teaching taking place in all 4 core contents?
Not English, but we have small group English, so we still have the English piece.
Okay.
But we have
there's-
history, science.
Correct,
and math.
okay. Thank you.
And with the new IEP next year, we're going to need that time to collaborate. That's a big, huge change.
Again, I think we have to be really careful about the difference between PLC versus prep versus common planning. PLC is a structure around student-driven. So I think we hear you on the time you need for all those things, but PLC is very specific in its purpose.
The new IEP would be modifications on that curriculum that you were talking about earlier. That's how we would modify the curriculum, is with the IEP.
I do want to say too, this is why also, and I'm sorry to go back to the autonomy piece beforehand. This is why the autonomy for teachers is so important, right? There could be disagreements on what PLC is used for, but as Brenda, you just brought up. But from our point of view, we know what's best for using that time as a collective group to assist children in the most meaningful way. And I think that's why special ed teachers are so adamant about this. They feel like they're about to deliver you a better service.
Josh, I don't feel that, I don't get the comfort for a second here that PLC time in and itself is being used effectively. I think it is being used for prep time for this, for common planning for that, which is scheduled at a different part of the day for various reasons, because that PLC component is, out of all the aspects of learning for a student, for a child, that is at the top of the list to use data-driven information to be able to affect what this student needs versus what that student needs, right? Having sat through a PLC, that's not what it's being used for. So,
Rich, all due respect, I mean, I sit through 2 a week.
Sure.
Throughout the entire year.
Sure.
And perhaps, different PLCs run differently.
Sure.
Perhaps people have an off day, but I can tell you that the PLCs that I operate in, the one that I do,
Yep.
and the ones that I hear about from other people, are using data-driven activities to better instruction for students.
Sure.
And
I will speak directly to that because it was my PLC that you were at. I will try to keep my feelings out of it, but I feel insulted that you just said that because we did nothing but fly through an agenda. Fly through getting multiple things done that day.
Sure.
I respect that you think that should have been done during a common planning time. We don't have that time together. This is what we're trying to make clear to you. We have a day a week that our whole team can get together. And we don't, because 3 out of 4 that month, given it's a full month of school, is with our principal. So I actually thought that the PLC you guys saw was ridiculously productive, and I cannot even believe you just said that, to be perfectly
It wasn't data-driven is my point. That was my point.
And you haven't seen other ones that are.
That's fair enough.
I do also want to bring up the point that we originally asked for more time at any given point to conduct these PLCs so that we don't have to rush through agendas. And at that point, the district has replied with a rejection. So that's also one of our concerns, that if you don't want us flying through agendas, then we need more adequate time that's put back to back in order to conduct it. I would have to say that, based upon my experiences of Emily's professionalism, that their PLCs are data-driven overall, all right? As I would have to imagine all of our PLCs are.
I would like to just go off that point too. PLC is never going to be talking about just numbers regularly.
Sure.
These are children.
Understood.
Emily, or do you want to go?
That's kind of the point I was going to make, is just because we're not looking at MCAS scores like on a specific day, like that might have happened whenever, like before, and like, okay, we need to work on writing, we need to work on reading, and then in that PLC that maybe you're seeing is teachers giving their best practices on how are we targeting like those specific areas. So it might not look data driven, but like we're using the data and then guiding the PLC to how we're going to facilitate it, if that makes sense.
And part of that process is, okay, we see the data. Let's say all the kids did really terrible on math problem 4, right, on this test. Okay, so we can sit in a PLC, but because we have limited PLC and we have all these things we're supposed to do during PLC, we just agree that that is the problem. Okay, and we all agree it's a fraction problem, I don't know, something like that. Okay, we all agree on that. We're all gonna talk about, you know, how we all gonna think about for the next week what we're gonna do about that. And the next week, you don't see, it's not the data, it's the, how can we do we have to rewrite the problem? Is it a problem of how it's taught? Did some kids get it more than others? Did one teacher's grades come out better than the other? Like, all of those types of things. And eventually you end up remaking whatever the thing is, or making maybe a couple activities to try and say, okay, what did that data do? But to say that, because there's not a, or to maybe my understanding is the implication that there isn't a chart, there isn't a number, there isn't a graph, and therefore what's being done, what's being made, what's being created isn't around data, is a misunderstanding of what it means to be data-driven. And I think that, just to get back to the point, of all of the departments, special education is the most apt to be data-driven. All they do is data. All those kids' IEPs are based on percentages, numbers of outcomes, numbers of opportunities, numbers of services, when they fit in. It is nothing but data. And so we already have, you know, all the content areas, the grade levels, they have their PLCs. And you could go back and forth on how you analyze certain data for a subject, but there is no argument that special education is not, at its core, data. And so if we're going to talk about the need for PLC around data, they should be the top of the list, if that's what we're focused on here as the special education need.
I hear what you're saying. I think we got off track a little. I think we were at a good place when we were talking about some modification to like a 75-25, an 80-20, a 50-50. I think that was a good place that we could have moved on.
Right.
But we definitely got.
I would just say, to wrap that up, I think this whole conversation kind of just reaffirmed our point of the autonomy. But okay, moving on to page, we're going to go to, make sure I'm not lost here, page 79. Yes, I did not skip that. Okay, good. So we understand with the preschool time, you were going to add, you took the 10 minutes somewhere else, but that was either going to be likely what we were understanding, end or beginning of day. The preschool teachers, we talked with them, they need that 75 minutes at some point during the day to ensure that they get that time in between, right? There's a difference between getting ready at the beginning of the day and taking a moment, okay, the kids are over there, I now need to get ready for this lesson. I need to analyze this data. I need to get ready for this assessment. So we're not really interested in, while I understand the time's going somewhere else, they need that time during that day. And then going down the way, the second thing I wanted to talk about was in regards to the time at the beginning of the day, you guys had the 2020, just for simplicity's sake, we just said, why don't we just say contractual time before and after? That way, every 3 years, or maybe it's even in the middle of a school year, you're teaching this, or not middle of school year, but in the middle of a contract cycle, you're changing that student time. You can just do it and we don't have to worry about going back to this language and changing the language. It will just reflect whatever the school committee and the bargainers change, yes?
Can you, I lost you there. I was with you on page 79, but
We're still on 79. I'm just going down to the next highlighted spot.
Where is the part?
The calculation of such time, it's under letter A, it's the fourth little paragraph in. The calculation of such times does not include contractual time before or after. That way, because right now we're at a 30-10, and you want to put it to 2020, and we're just saying, well, we might, in the event we go to 25-5, 20, or 35-5, whatever, it'll just be reflected. We understand the point that it will not be in that contractual time before and after school.
Okay, thank you.
Just kind of saves us all a headache in future negotiations. This is the last part of this does go to number 3, our proposal number 3, but we're putting it just in here, and it's also reflected in our proposal. We are gracious by the school committee looking for these days, and there's still a bit to be said about figuring out this prep time deficit. It helps. What the school committee we're thankful for. It's great. We came down to 10 from 20, and I don't know if it's on this page. Oh yeah, and if you go on to page 80 at the top, we try to be creative here. We do have a shorter lunch recess time than some other districts, and we're thinking, well, if the half days are a concern with the school committee, how about we just extend the lunch recess 5 minutes each, and that would drastically help kind of close that gap on that prep time deficit. You want to talk about that? Yeah.
Again, I am so pleased to see that there was something offered for elementary prep time, because there really hasn't been in such a long time, so thank you very much for that. I do want to point out those 6 days that were offered, fantastic, but we really need more consistent, daily prep time, not necessarily daily, but on a more regular basis, because I can't say that, okay, I can get all the stuff I need to prepare for these lessons on this day, and then I'll wait 8 weeks and I can get time again, because things happen on a continual basis all the time with kids. So if there was some way we could stretch out finding a little more time on a more regular basis, as opposed to every 6 to 8 weeks, that would be really helpful.
Did you say as opposed to the?
No, not as, not as opposed to, but because we need the daily or the more regular as well.
So is this in addition to the 6?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, this is 10 total, you're saying?
10 total, and then the 5 minutes and 5 minutes.
In addition to the 6
in addition to the
half
6,
days.
yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Going down the way, I just lost my spot, so give me 1 second. We're still bus duty. Perfect. The bus duty stipend, we never got a response, and we talked about this as a team. If there could be, and I know I can anticipate the response, which is we can't guarantee anything. I understand that, because we're not the bus company. The school committee is not the bus company. We're not the bus company. However, if there is some sort of assurance that the students would be on the last bus by the end of the contractual day, we could then talk about modifying this heavily. But the fact of the matter is, we are looking for a stipend to help with those late buses that come after what's currently 3:15, and which hopefully is not much later than 3:15 in the next contract. So that's why we put that right there. And then the one mid-year, that was just to reflect our current, where we currently stand. We're going to go to the next page, to page 81. So, you know, this one is really to kind of talk about that collaboration. You know, obviously our principals they run the buildings. They have the final say in many things. We just want to have some sort, we want to kind of memorialize the academic teams will have some sort of at least collaboration or consultation, as we put it, right, with that building principal before the building principal at these elementary levels makes that final decision, right? Like, kind of work together on how to make that scheduling work. It's really simply that. Going to page
Connor,
80
can I just,
Oh, yes, go, please,
is
go.
that just, going back to the theory versus practicality, is that something that in theory or in practicality is happening today?
Good
And you're just looking
question.
to memorialize?
I'm going to defer to a elementary educator. Like, do you feel like academic teams currently are working with building principals?
As far as the schedule?
Yeah.
Yeah, but the principal creates the schedule though, right? The mass schedule gives it.
Oh, these are 5 and 6.
5 and 6, yeah.
5 and 6.
This is just the Ryan.
This is the Ryan School,
Yeah.
yeah, specifically.
I think this is to be kind of reflect more. Oh, I know it. Sorry, my mind. Okay, it's more to be consistent with the win kind of way, which is right now the principal being consulted. Sorry, I was still on K to 4, but we're on 5 to 6. My
I
mistake.
can add a little context for you, though, because if they were to be the same, then it would kind of operate the same.
Yeah.
And so at the WIN, there's a level of consultation, right, with the building principal, but the building principal in recent years, along with the vice principal, assistant principal, has done a lot of the lion's share, right? But utilizing the team model, they can kind of touch base with team leaders to discuss. So there's kind of the consultation piece.
Okay.
So theory and practice, I think, mesh pretty nicely here.
And the same would be on 82. It's just with the Win School. So nothing really different. Like nothing that's different from our current where we are with the Ryan. Just that same kind of consistent practice that Josh just outlined. If we go on to 83 together.
I'm sorry, Connor, can we go
Yes.
back 1 second?
Yes.
So I'm not finding there to be a huge change in language on 5 and 6. Like, so the previous language, building principal shall develop instructional schedules in collaboration with academic teams. New language, each academic team will develop its instructional block schedule in consultation with the building principal.
Josh, do you want to kind of comment on that since it's more, you know more than.
It feels like it's the same, but what am I missing?
Yeah, no, you're not missing much. There was a piece, though, prior that I think was cut out, or at least was tried to be cut out by the district
Okay.
in relation to the 6 block schedule, or the block scheduling. I think this is a while back, so I think this is just kind of like leftover compromise that we're kind of throwing in, but yes.
Bottom line, it's consultation, collaboration,
I
principal and team, both Ryan, both Wen.
You got it.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, thank you.
Okay, going to 83, and we're going to go to letter C on section 9 right there. I'm going to just turn this over to Jill. Jill is one of our department leaders, and Jill's going to kind of speak about why this block is important. It's probably too close.
So this block for the department leads is very important. I know I've already spoken on this before, but we cannot use our prep time to do the things that we need to do as department leads because we are preparing to teach our classes. We need that block to manage the responsibilities that come along with the department lead, including, and I'm just going to include some of them, but I do have a huge list if you ever want to hear it. Communicating to our departments, discussing and implementing school-wide policies in the department lead meetings, and then discussing them and helping our department to implement them. Discussing increasing enrollment, fielding parent inquiries and complaints, coordinating department member absences when someone in our department is absent, making sure that, they have their sub-plans and the rosters and that everything's good to go, along with any long-term sub, coordinating that, or any student teachers. We are, giving interviews, going on School Spring, going through resumes, conducting interviews, meeting with the committee, Planning, assemblies, and special events. You know, each department is kind of unique where each department has kind of a different role or something that they do that's unique to their department. Looking at MCAS, you know, evaluations and preparation, and analyzing the questions. Having this block allows us to have more time with our department. So you're more likely with that third block to have a shared prep with the people in your department so that you're more available to them, because we are really a resource to the people in our department. And, you know, that really needs to be during contractual hours, because the teachers should be able to come to us during their contractual hours. And, you know, anything that kind of pertains to our department, they're coming to us. So we need that time to be able to collaborate with them and put together whatever we need to put together.
And I would just say also, I loved that point that Jill made about teachers, the other people in the department, them correlating a time, like a shared area, because years ago when I was newer, there was one year, just by happenstance, I didn't align with any of the blocks that my department chair had. And they made a big difference when I was still a developing educator. You know, she was really someone that I would go to for advice, help, vent. And it made a big difference. So I just want to echo that very important point. And the rest of that's kind of going on to 84. We can just go to the bottom highlight part because it's the same. It's more the same. But this is the coaches. And I think we're pretty close to an agreement here. We just have 2 additions. The first thing we added was outside of the contractual hours shall be equivalent to the time spent by teachers at the aforementioned meeting. Why do we do that? Just so we can save ourselves all these different numbers and everything. Just that memorialization, their out of time hours will be equivalent to teachers out of time hours, right? And we all know those, but that way it just doesn't kind of over murky what's pretty simple, which is it just won't exceed beyond what the teachers do beyond the I think 7 to 2, but 7-hour day, right? So that extra hour, they do that also, right?
Yes.
Yes.
And then letter F, I think the last time the committee did not accept this, but I really want to kind of iterate the importance of this. First of all, our coaches actually really in good faith were like, we need to have language that talks about summer because we're needed in the summer, and it's kind of an expectation that we do that. Like, they want this language in. They want language in to say that they may be required to help with things over the summer. And I think for anyone who's looking at a new hire to come to this district as a coach, they can, like, let's be real. Most of us, when we were hired to this district or any district, took a peek at the contract just to know what they're getting themselves into, because every district has different nuanced aspects, right? And it might be really important to them that, yeah, you might be required to come help at a training over the summer. That way it helps them make their decision, but also it just doesn't put, especially newer non-professional coaches in an awkward spot like, I didn't know I had to do this, what? This is just ways, it's kind of giving the district a bit of, the right to help with, have them help with training, and that way full disclosure, they know about that. That's all they wanted. It's just really a good faith thing to the school committee and district. But and then all these numbers, the highlighted sections 11, 12, it's just because we added the sections. Going down the way, everything over here. The last part, and I think Aaron might talk about this specifically, is the overnights, okay?
I don't have anything in front of me. So I don't have any paper?
I shared you the document.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
great. Okay, so the overnight, I think the question I had asked before was, when would the district consider me off duty if I'm doing the DECA thing overnight? Technically, me and Miss Ring and Mr. Sullivan, we stayed up until 2 a.m. to make sure those kids were in their rooms, and then we were up at 7. But are we gonna stop being paid at 10, at 11, when the kids are supposed to be in their rooms? Like, I think the question was, when do you consider us off duty on those times when we're technically supervising your kids for 24 hours? And accruing the liability that comes with that. Did the district have a response?
I don't think we have an official response. I can only speak for myself a little bit as we look at some of the stipends for different things. We want to provide as much opportunity for students to do as much as they can do. And whether it's overnight trips or it's just a 1 hour, 2 hour thing. The question is, how do you balance all that with the budget that we have?
Yeah, and so the overnight trips
so I don't have
they aren't super frequent. I can think of two off the top of my head, the student council one that Ms. Glass does, and then the DECA one that Mr. Sullivan runs. This wouldn't include any of the, like, the EF tours or anything like that. That's not what I'm talking about when I mention those.
Well, I mean, we approve several different overnight things, you know, whether it's hockey goes to Maine overnight, robotics, I don't know if they're staying when they go, you know, I mean, we've approved a lot of different, not a lot, but more than just a few a year. But when we look at.
I think that would fall under their stipend now.
It would, but like it would for Mr. Sullivan, who is the.
Exactly.
But now you've got additional people that join.
Right.
So just like any of these other programs, you've got your person under the stipend, but there's additional people. So when we look at the Appendix B in entirety, it's a hard one.
Yeah, and I just
I
think,
don't have an answer, is really
Okay,
it. But
but I think that would-
completely honest in saying that.
Yeah, it's fair enough.
but so then the question would be, some of those times it's not at night, so it's like,
Right.
you know what I mean? I think that there needs
No,
to be
it's
like
more
a
than
little
the
bit
prom.
more.
You know,
I'm sorry?
I said it's more than just, you know, doing the
Yeah.
prom.
Yeah.
So I get it, and the liability and the, you know, responsibility is bigger, so.
So I guess we just
We're not
add,
going to include the overnights. There definitely would need to be some sort of language on, like, when am I off duty? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even though you're not.
so I guess if, and I understand like maybe you don't want to necessarily for an overnight hour by hour, because, you know, a lot of hours, you know, the person would be sleeping. But the things that happen at night that they have to deal with are usually, having chaperoned overnight things, they're usually pretty crazy stories that you're like, what? So we just ask maybe some sort of creativity in a way, like how, I understand you want to protect that they're not, maybe not going to be paid hourly every hour throughout the night, but where can we meet to find some sort of compensation for those events that happen?
Like some sort of like lump
Right,
sum
right.
for like kind of thing. But I just feel like.
I understand your point. Like,
Yeah, and I do too, but it's just kind of like, if we're taking the route of like, we're being compensated for that time, like, how can you tell me that my time is worth something for some hours and then it's not for others when, like, I don't know.
And I know I might seem hyperbolic when I say like the things that happen at night like are crazy. I think everybody who's chaperoned overnight, especially over a few nights with students, does and they will deal with something in the middle of the night because of God knows what, right? Could be a homesick panic attack, could be a medical emergency. It's things that we have to be alert and ready to make really sound and professional decisions on what to do in that moment.
I think an overarching topic of conversation, and Jill, you could speak to it a little too, being in the Appendix B subcommittee for as long as we were. I think when it came down to the number of hours that you put into AppB, programs and things like that, it just never breaks down hourly. You just, it doesn't. I mean, even coaching and everything else you're doing. Yeah, you can't, put an hourly rate to that. So I guess there's some more.
But I think my thing would be like, this is like, it's an Appendix B in the sense like, you're like volunteering, but you're taking on a responsibility of something that's like not your technical Appendix B job. Like I do DECA because it's fun and the kids like it and it's a great experience, but that's not my Appendix B position.
Sure. So I think what kind of go to your point then, we'd be amenable to some, like Aaron said too, some sort of idea of like, maybe it's not hourly, right? But there's like this kind of compensation for those that may not fall the same under like chaperoning junior or senior prom. Something to think about. So we just, obviously we don't need an answer right now, obviously, just something to kind of entertain. All right, section 17 was the DLC language. The district last time or not last time exactly, but a few meetings ago did reject this. And I think Roseanne made the point something around like this language was a bit like, I forget. She found some sort of troublesome thing with the language. we're amenable if something in this language proposal, we talked with our DLC educators, this is what they came up with. Josh and I had, I remember it like yesterday, we had a very long Zoom meeting with them after school one day to kind of really hash this out. If there's any part of this that is just really turning the committee off, let's talk about, like, let's, and I know you're not going to have an answer right yet because you need to review the language again privately, but we're happy to find some sort of way. But the fact of the matter is our DLC educators they have a really different job than Reg Ed and even MS&T educators in all these different schools. Their roles are, they're unbelievable, frankly, what they do. It's really amazing. So we're really down to negotiate this down, but this is very important to those members that they have some sort of working conditions, just because we all have working conditions, and right now they really don't, and that's led to some real, some real matters to address. Even in my 7-8 years here, DLC educators maybe realize, oh my God, wait, I don't even get that, and then there's a discussion, right? This kind of makes it clear. Here is what your conditions are, and we're very happy to negotiate that down, but that's just the rationale there, the DLC educators. And then section 18 is the special education proposal that we had. And this was a twofold aspect. The first aspect was the transition time for every school. Back in the day, many, many, many years ago, like maybe 10 years ago or less or so, I don't know exact, but the Ryan, MSNTs, and the WIN would be able to meet to talk about whatever grade was coming up, those needs. And they found it really beneficial. The second one is to the high school's TLCS block. Jill's going to speak on both of those more specifically, so I'll hand them to her.
So talking about the transition, like Connor said, it's really important. And of course, we're reading the IEPs as the kids come up. I'm just going to speak to the high school because that's where I am. Of course, we're reading the kids' IEPs, but it's so much more beneficial to have a conversation with the special educator from the middle school to just really understand, what can I do? What am I going to do to support this student the best? And, that goes all the, kids have a unique number of transitions in this district. And so it's really important that those teachers have the time to make sure that the students are successful. Speaking to the extra time for the K-8, to ensure that they are getting time when they are completing testing. And so it's not only completing the actual testing with the student, but it's collecting data from the teachers and pulling data from the previous IEP, and then actually writing and creating that report. That takes a lot of time. While it takes much longer than 45 minutes, we're just looking to get a fraction of time back for those teachers. And then the TLCS block for the high school is something that has been in practice for, this is its 5th year, so we're looking to memorialize that in the contract. We are all teaching and co-teaching our own classes at the high school outside of everything that we're required to do as special educators. So the students play a bigger role in their IEP meeting at the high school level. We have them come and join the meeting, and we like to get them to the point where they can almost run the meeting by their senior year, but that requires a lot of prep time with them. So we're, talking to the student, preparing them for the meeting. We're really going through the IEP with them. It's much more student-driven at the high school, but that's something I have to do one-on-one with the student. I can't do that in the middle of class. I would never want to call out a student for their accommodations or modifications or anything like that. So that is time that we have to meet with those students. We also are required to do observations of the student for their 3-year reevaluations if it's a specific learning disability. And again, I'm going to go back to the new IEP, and it's how big it is compared to the current IEP and how data-driven it is. We really need that time that we have right now. I can't imagine where we're going to find the time to adapt to the new IEP. And so losing time would just be absolutely detrimental. Like I said, our students really play a big role in their IEP at the high school, and we need that time with our students for it's such a great skill that they have, if they can do that by the time they leave high school, it's a skill that they will take with them for the rest of their lives. And that's really the most important thing.
And I just really want to say to everything Jill said too, I think one thing that keeps coming up in conversation is that the word prep, right? This is not prep. Prep, in my definition, is the getting ready or the assessing of data or whatnot of the daily to daily to daily for our students. This is the infrastructure of how that next year will go. Getting ready for those students, getting ready, in this case, is a new IEP, which is a huge, colossal change, right? Not writing IEPs for students, infrastructurally getting ready for that new IEP. So I just wanted to make sure we are all on the same page with that.
I do have a question.
Yes.
So, for this TLCS, is this something you want a block out of your 5-block assignment? I'm confused.
Yes, it is. That's what we have currently.
So that's what we have now?
Yes.
We don't have anything called TLCS.
No,
right
it's
now.
not. It's a new name. It was previously called MTSS, but it is obviously not MTSS.
The new name is the proposal.
The new name is, yes, it's part of the proposal, yes.
Okay.
Okay. Going down the way, I'm going to go to page, this is ours right here. It's beginning at, okay, we're not going to go there right yet. That's going to be part of one of our major proposals. So I'm actually going to go all the way up to, looking at my little cheat sheet I made right here. We're going to go to number 5 up here, and that would be under page 20, going on to 21.
Page 20? Page
20, go to 21, exactly. Right at the bottom of page 20 there.
Like 21?
So we're willing to TA that above part in section 2 right there. So the blue language that the district last countered, we're willing to TA all of that. But the one thing we really kind of need to insist on holding on as of right now is the way it is right now has led to a lot of trouble. And the principals of this district give educators, after 3 years, professional teacher status, after rigorously evaluating them, seeing how they are, they trust them to be in this district, you know, for presumably the long haul, right? And if these educators are licensed, there really is no other reason but to let them grow somewhere else. I know I've already made that point. I don't need to make that again, but that's why we put this back in. This is very important to us. So that's what you'll see on the top of page 21. Okay. Next one, I'm going to go to number 7. So number 7 is on page number 7. Oh, coach. Oh, we already talked about coaches. So we are all good. Okay. Just make sure I didn't forget anything. Nope, that's all good. So we're going to go to class size, which is on page 28. Page 28. It starts at 27, but really the change we're having is page 28. We understand, so class size is becoming a bigger and bigger issue, both at the elementary level, but even at the high school level, right? I'll give you an example. I have 2 inclusion 10th grade classes this year. I had 1 inclusion 10th grade class last year. Last year, the class size was 18. This year, because of student enrollment, we have 8 English teachers instead of 9. And one of my 2 is 27 right now. The difference between 27 and 18, I can't even begin to tell you the difference there. So many students are you may be like, they might be more quiet, they might be more shy because there's a lot of people in the room. They might not want to vocalize to me how they're feeling. I may not get to know them as well as I did last year. I can tell you there are plenty of students that I don't know as well as the ones I had last year. And those are the students that we, first of all, are identifying need higher growth. And second of all, it's just not beneficial to them to be in an oversized classroom. But we also completely understand the fact that the district cannot guarantee that a class size is going to be 25 all school year. Students enroll all the time. Students leave sometimes, right? Tewksbury, I think we're seeing influx of families coming in, which is great. We're trying to figure out some way to lock this down. So, while we had the all effort, we were thinking maybe some sort of monetary compensation for a teacher who has to deal with an oversized class. And I will say, I think I would call these numbers oversized if they're above these numbers. So the way this would work is every 5 students, like $500 to an educator a year, or any part thereof. So $100 for a 26th student in high school, or a 21st student in elementary, $200 for a 27th and a 22nd, something like that. We're trying to really, we hear that the district cannot guarantee those class sizes are going to stay the same all year. People come and go, things change. But we also can't stress enough the importance of properly staffing our rooms to not go way over these numbers either. Because I can tell you right now, from last school year to this school year, I can tell you the difference that I've observed ad nauseum, and I'd be happy to talk about that offline even more. But any questions on that?
I do have one quick question.
Yes.
So it says grades 5 through 12. So if you're grade 7 and your class size exceeds that, the stipend 500 would be for the whole year. If you're at the high school and you're doing a half-year course.
That's a good point, okay? So I would say that'd be something we'd want to talk about if you guys were willing to talk about that.
Okay.
Good point, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
All right, going down to number 9, and that would be on page 28. We already talked about that, so we're gonna go to number 10. That is on teacher assignment. Oh, okay, perfect. All right, under 29, page 29. Want to go there with me?
Yep.
We know the district rejected this one, but we're looking for, we just put it back in for now and maintained it, but we're willing to talk about this a bit more. We can get creative with this, but the conditions are very important. Especially, I know we talked ad nauseum before February break of the heating and such, but even just thinking about safety, I mean, I had multiple teachers, we all had multiple teachers each come to us saying, the cell data or whatnot, what if that worst case scenario happens? A lot of buildings are not really infrastructure to help kind of communicate effectively with other educators or police. So we're willing to get creative with this one, but I want to kind of make the point that one's still on the table there. Whereas number 12, we're going to drop it. We're not going to do the half-day December. So you can consider that one withdrawn for number 12. And that's on page, well, technically page 29, but goes on to page 30. So we're going to withdraw that. I already talked about number 15 with DLCs. We already talked about number 16 with high school departments. We're going to go to number 17, and number 17 is on page 33. Sick leave buyback was a very important thing to our members. We understand it was rejected, but we're going to counter ourselves here, the 25% buyback. This incentivizes very wonderful educators to stay in our district until they retire. Very important for our students. Going down to number 18, that's going to be on page 36. We're maintaining that religious discussion. I know we heard you, but it's already a practice. Why not just memorialize the practice that for anyone who observes any religion that school calendar in Tewksbury, maybe a religion that they may not acknowledge as far as not acknowledging the holiday for everyone, right? So Jewish holidays, Islam holidays in Tewksbury, the schools don't close for that, but for those members, it just gives them that, here's where I go if I do, practice that religion. We came down to 4 for personal days, but then added at the end of that 1 unused personal day, maybe carried over to the next year, up to a total of 5 personal days. So it would be 4 a year, but if you use only 3 1 year of the 4, that 4th goes to the next year. But you can't exceed, you can't have 10. And then going on to number 37, at the top is our association leave. We came down significantly on this one. There's twofold here. One is that right now in our language, we have 7 members for the MTA Delegates Conference. It's actually this Friday into Saturday. Our numbers just changed to 8. So we have a full delegation going, but one of our members is taking a day that's not allotted that the other members get.
That's me. I'm taking the personal day.
Anyways, the language we decided with was, how about we just say the same amount of days for association as there are delegates to the annual meeting as provided for the association president. So I can't pull a wise one and say, we have 120. Like, I'd have to give you the documentation proof that we only have as currently 8. And then the other thing is we added 1 association leave day per building every year. So that'd be 6 extra for the whole year.
Can you clarify that again?
Yeah.
I think I need to
So
hear
like
your
one
math
member
on
per
that.
building, only 1 member per building could take it if it was like an ESP or whatnot, some sort of MTA event or a union event, they could take that day. So that comes down from the 180 that we were talking about. The one that had, remember our original proposal had like 1 per member, 1 per building, 6.
6 on top of the 7 currently? Is it?
Well,
Well,
on
not
top of the
7.
delegation. So whatever the delegation number was that year, plus the 1 per building.
If you're curious about delegation numbers, they don't just change wildly, it changes with the membership number. I think it's 1 per every X amount of members of the union.
Can you just illustrate what that math would look like, so when we go back and what that would look like in
It would
members?
still just be the 8 if we were allotted them, that would be out for the one-time-a-year conference.
Right.
And then there would be an opportunity for a person per building throughout the year to use a day to go to something else, some other
Person
type
per-
of conference.
Person per building is if Emily, for some reason, has something going on at Heathbrook, she gets the association day for Heathbrook. That's it for Heathbrook. Heathbrook is done.
Yep.
So
6
it's
and 8.
currently 7, correct me if I'm wrong, currently 7, we want to go to 8 plus 6. So
Yes.
14 members, 1 day.
Because the delegation happens once a year. There's no flexibility in that. MTA says this is the weekend for the delegation. Currently, all of our days are essentially allotted to this one event.
But it's not 14 members for 1 day, if that's what you just.
Right, no,
If
yeah.
that's what you just.
No,
said.
I'm thinking 8 for the 1 day this
Yes,
Friday.
and then
And then-
possible 6. If people-
Individually, up to 6, 1 per building,
For the year.
for a different day of the year.
Yes.
And the fact of the matter, we'd have to revisit this again, at least with the delegates day.
Right.
Because our numbers may fluctuate, maybe our membership will shrink, we'll go back to 7, maybe in 10 years it'll slightly grow, we'll go to 9, right? And the language in there is clearly to show that the association president will ensure to provide the superintendent the literal proof of their delegation numbers, so it's not like, we have 120 all of a sudden. You know what I mean? Like,
I don't think we get that now, though. Is that something?
Well, we
that-
get that.
Okay.
We get told what the delegation is. When we wrote this contract, when this language went in, it must have been 7, and so they made it 7.
I think it changed in 2020.
Right, so it shifts. So we're just saying, it was similar to how we wanted to get rid of the specific like minutes before and after contract time. It feels like there are certain things that we always have to talk about because they just fluctuate normally. This is one of those things. It just fluctuates based on membership. And so instead of having to rehash it all the time, if it just automatically matches, if that part automatically matches the delegation, Connor gets an email from the MTA saying, here's your membership, here's the delegation number. We can just forward that to you and be like, here, our delegation number is 8, it went back to 7, it's up to 9. And then you can say, okay, great, I know to only approve 8 or to only approve 7 for that day. Does that make more sense?
Oh, yeah, no.
And I know I already said this, I just want to be very clear, the delegation number does not dramatically increase or decrease. It literally, it's like, I think it's 1 every like 35 or 1 every 50 members or something. So Alyssa Tewksbury had a crazy number of exploding students, that we got like 50 to 55 new educators. Like it's not like they're like, you get 9 this year.
For consideration, if we are going to sincerely whittle down our contractual use, you could see a significant change in your membership.
We could, but I think it would
anticipate
take some time. Part of the reason why we wanted to go with the statement of intent route is because we do fully understand it's going to take you some time to like transfer those over, to find people, to attract people. So we do think, while it's foreseeable that it may go up by the end of this contract, it would be highly unlikely that it would balloon. Other districts, we asked, other districts kind of have similar, it's not a hard number. They haven't seen anything huge change. And if there was something massive, I mean, we could certainly, I mean, you could say, you know, this wasn't what we were expecting or something. But we don't expect it to fluctuate that much, even if we brought over, I don't know, like 15 ESPs a year, 20 ESPs a year. You wouldn't see a massive jump.
I don't think, even 20, I don't know if you'd see any jump, to be quite honest.
Right.
Well, how many members do you have?
340.
And we have 8
Yeah.
delegates for that number.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Got it.
whoever can do the math quickly on
I'm
their
doing it.
heads.
40.
340 divided by 8. This is like very rough, but it's like 42.5. So let's pretend it's 40 every 40
One delegate
members.
for every 50 or
Okay.
so.
That would, you know, it
Right,
would,
that's
yeah.
helpful.
Yeah, does that make sense? Yeah.
Thank you.
I should know this. Don't show this to my bosses.
Where am I? Okay. Okay. Tuition reimbursement. Okay. We heard Rich's point specifically, and we understand, like, you know, members.
Page.
Oh, I'm sorry. 38. I'm sorry. 38. Okay. You know, we heard the point. I think the thing, so we have the $85,000 that the district proposed or countered, so we didn't try to like counter it or go up at all. The big difference said one or more courses of that $1,500, and if not all the funds have been done, we already talked about this with Dave, but there'd be some sort of way to inform the association on a certain date of that change. And I think we already kind of, with that second part, we've reached a consensus on what we could do, as opposed from the people who have applied but haven't fulfilled it yet versus the amount of money that has not been applied for at all. So it's reflective of our ESP proposal we've already hashed out.
So this is to reflect, this is saying that a TTA teacher can take as many courses up to the $1,500 allotment.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. And for most courses, it's probably gonna be one.
Right.
But, you know, there are some courses that you can get for decent deals
But
for.
if one course is $1,200 and you take another $1,200 course, you can get the $300 reimbursement towards that second.
So, Mr. Libby, do we have any information that talks about average reimbursement per course on average?
Yeah, I know.
I understand that a matriculated master's degree course or a PhD doctorate course is going to run you probably more than that, I would imagine, right? But is that what educators are taking to suffice the credits, or are they taking maybe more continuing education type? Like, I'm trying to understand
I think there's 2 points to that. So first, I do think that, and I could be wrong about this because I don't actually know like the schematic of the district, but I think education in general is in a place where we do need to bring in like young educators, because a lot of the that's called the middle of the road educators have left and they need to be replaced, like they've left education.
Sure.
A lot of the people you're going to get are then going to be on some kind of master's path, right? Where, because you're required to, it's not an option, right? And so to what I said about the aides earlier, it is a perk to be in a district that will give you a little bit towards that master's, because as somebody paying for mine over a great length of time out of pocket, it drags on and on. Additionally, we're capped at $750 currently. So if you're going to take a continuing ed class and there's one that's really cool and you would love to take, but it's $1,200, and there's another one that is online and you can take for $550, you're going to pick the 551 because there's no money out of pocket. If we raise the amount of money that you could get, it's possible that people start looking at better quality courses because they can get reimbursed for more of that course, which is then just more beneficial to the teacher, which is then just more beneficial to the kids. So I think that plays in on two parts. Does that address your point? Okay.
And I would just say this too, we're meeting the district at the financial cap. You guys are saying $85,000 most. Okay, well, if I utilize my $1,500 and Emily takes her time, maybe you did one $500 course, but in May, you want to do another one to get up to $1,000. Well, $85,000 has been met. Too bad. You know what I mean? Like the money, we're not at, like.
Well, you also got to remember the lane jumps too. So that's what I'm trying to understand is, can someone take, and it's a good thing if they can, so let me be clear, we don't want to handicap anyone here, but what I'm trying to understand is it's the $1,500 impact for the course, or for courses, excuse me, let me rephrase. Can you jump the lane then with doing that potentially as well? So you're not only getting the reimbursement and the benefit of that, then you're also getting the salary.
I don't think you could do that.
Because most courses are only going to give you like 3 credits. Like when I take a UMass Lowell class, it's only 3 credits max.
Sure.
So I still need to take, the next lane over is 15.
Sure.
So I have to take
5 courses.
5 courses. So I don't think you'd see many lane jumps like suddenly.
Definitely not any.
Well,
And I know 5 doesn't seem like a lot, but 5
it's
is
a
a
lot.
lot when you're
No,
working.
it's a lot. No, it's 100% a
Right,
lot. I
so-
agree.
15 credits.
Yeah, that's going to take it.
Credit course is going to hit, I'm going to hit the 1,500.
And that's why I'm trying to understand from Mr. Levy, like, what is the average course reimbursement today that we're doing?
I have to jump in a little too, because in the summer, we have many teachers. First of all, anything above the master's is not mandatory. It's clearly an opportunity to raise, it's a benefit for a teacher to raise their salary. The bachelor's to master's is mandatory, which is why we originally put a priority on that, right? Because they have to do that, and of course, it's more expensive. Typically, we're seeing in the summer, $350 courses. And teachers will cluster 10 or more to get the discount. If we were at $1,500, a teacher could ultimately, the district could ultimately fund almost all 5 for an immediate $2,000 bump in salary lane. And even though it's an $85,000 max, that could escalate really fast if a teacher can basically, almost on the district's checkbook, make the $2,000 and take the courses. So I would worry about how fast we could escalate that, even at $400 a course. Typically, we're seeing $359, and many teachers are taking courses through Learner's Edge is the total, up to $459.
They wouldn't get 15 credits over the summer.
We absolutely have seen that.
As somebody who is actively trying to do that to sustain a life, I did do the 5-class bundle that you're talking about. It was over $1,500, and you don't get it right away. So right now I'm still paying off all of those courses, so I haven't gotten any sort of raise yet. But I'm done my classes, but I just can't pay for them yet. So it's not as immediate as you're making it seem, because I don't have $2,000 to pay for my classes right now. You know what I mean? So it's not like you take 5 classes, done, good. I've finished my classes and I can't pay for them yet. So it's not like these raises are happening as quickly as you're
saying that's outside of that 15, that's higher than the cap with a $1,500.
Yeah, so even if I did get the $400 for that one class, I still have to pay $1,600, and I don't have that. You know what I mean? So it's not as quickly as a turnaround as I feel like it's being made out to be.
Sure, but I think the piece is you're investing in and we call it, and I don't want to make it sound fresh, the gift that keeps on giving. We pay for some of the courses for the salary lane $2,000+ bump you'll get forever. So it keeps.
Well, but you'll get that teacher's betterment of their own education for the duration of their career here in this district.
I was.
Right?
I hear what you're saying, yeah.
So if I choose, which may involve then teaching specialty courses, especially for the high school, if somebody really wants to go down a track where then they oh, now I have the certificate. That is a betterment for the district, and that is a betterment for the students, that now I can teach some specialized class.
So this is exactly where I was kind of going with this is, I agree that there's a salary benefit, as you said. But again, it's a little bit insulting that you're insinuating that that's the only reason we do it, because I'm looking at my courses right now, and I have very specifically taken courses like one all about doc spreadsheets, et cetera, when we were in COVID times. When we were rolling out the science of reading last year, I very specifically took a focus on phonics, science of reading, et cetera. When EL was a big thing, I took the going above and beyond for academic English learners. So it's very important for our students that we continue our education in this way, because it has made me a better teacher. It's not just about financial bump.
And I agree with you, Emily, and I'm glad that you're taking advantage of the types of courses that are relevant. I will tell you, we often see right on the form, and you know we've worked really hard with the prior TTA leadership on making that form work for folks. People will put right on, and we say, is this for your licensure? Is this for, your content, for your PDPs? And people write right on there, salary differential. So it does also benefit to have the reimbursement to make a higher salary. My only concern that I was bringing up is it's not just the $85,000 we have in salary reimbursement that could be impacted really quickly. And I think that has to just be considered when we think about how many bites at the apple, in a slang term, that there are, and how quickly that can add
So
up.
I think to clarify, and Emily, I think I understand what you're saying, is that the predictability of employees being able to, or teachers jumping lanes and steps.
It's a little bit more measured.
It's unpredictable. So when there's more of an open-ended ability to take multiple access to the same amount of money, that can be disruptive to the budget. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and we don't have any way to prepare for that.
Not in a poor way. I
Right.
see what you're saying.
I just wanted to add on behalf of some of the specialized staff, the Unified Arts especially, I have been fortunate where I do have my master's and I've been able to do some Learner's Edge courses in STEM and tech because it is such a high and fast-paced growing field. But in discussions with colleagues, PE, art, music, those courses really aren't available on more of these Learner's Edge type websites, and they're being greatly disadvantaged because at no fault, we used to have NPen. PD was very content specific for us. That has gone away, and content specific PD is just a challenge for Unified Arts across the board. So just speaking on behalf of kind of my people, I suppose, that $1,500 would be a huge deal for people to actually take college level credit applicable to their content that they can bring back to the classroom that really isn't available on the cheaper available options. So
Thank you.
Okay, going down to page, we're almost done. I know we're past the time, so I'm going to be very quick. We countered the raise as of now. We find that the step readjustment is very important to us. And right now, we're at a 6%, 6%, 5%. And then going down, that's going to match with Appendix B. And co-curricular, extracurricular, I want to make sure I'm not missing anything. The other thing also, and I'm going to have you jump a little bit to the stipends, is going to be, that's going to be on page 89 into 90. So I'm having you jump way ahead, or not way ahead, but somewhat ahead. Okay, page 89 to 90. So everyone can go there. We already talked about the chaperoning events, and that's, you can see it in district number 1. We already talked about that. The subject to principal approval, we're having a hard time like digesting every time an academic and I know it's not every time, but like it's innately part of their day jobs, and it opens the door to, not that, and I genuinely mean this, I'm not being fresh, not that any principals in this room right now would take advantage of that. They would not, but like it does open the door to kind of a slippery slope for any future hypothetical administrator. We have concerns. Going down that way, under the modify academic ones,
Connor, can you just cite, what page are you on?
I'm sorry, yeah, I just was on 89, but now we're on 90, okay, page 90. Okay, as far as if you go down to that bullet that says add the following language, as academic positions are teacher leadership roles, the individuals holding these departmental and team leader stipends, we want to meet you somewhere, right? Because we understand a lot of these academic leader positions need to participate sometimes in interviews over the summer. I think of department chairs at the high school. It's kind of an expected part of their role, and they understand that too. So we want to kind of hone in on a more specific reason they'd be there. What our members are not interested in is something that may be just, I can't even, Angela, you have an example you could give, but there could be so many other things with the way that the language you guys proposed is, that we're saying departmental team leader stipend positions may be expected to attend interviews over the summer. We are totally understanding of that, totally understanding. So we just want to be very specific with what would be expected of them. Along with that, going down the way, we, just to add the hourly rate, I did that with my math, hopefully I'm right, $36.95 for FY25.
You're right.
Nice, okay.
I'm sure Rich was going to check anyway.
Yeah, no, I'm okay, let's go, okay, I'm teaching math next year. Okay, so all those numbers right there, and then we already talked about the buses, and now we go down to Team HS morning announcements and Team HS advisory. Team HS morning announcements, what the current person who does this, what she does every morning, and it's really not in the morning because that's during the contractual time. It's either before the morning, before 7 a.m., or it's at 2 p.m. when all of us teachers send our announcements, whether we're advisors, teachers trying to open up a new club, coaches, whatnot. What she has to do every day to write that script, and then to make sure the studio's open for when kids start coming in, it is pretty phenomenal what she does with those morning announcements. And we're looking for some sort of compensation for that time, because she can't do all of that during the school day. In fact, she probably does very little of it because she has a full teaching load. And also, per her instructions, we have until 2 p.m. Sorry, I'm losing my voice, I guess. 2 p.m. to we have until 2 p.m. to send those announcements. So she has to have that time to vet those announcements before going home every day to make sure, okay, got this one on, got this one. Oh, did this one expire yet? No, it did not. It did expire today, I'll delete it. So there is a decent amount of prep and, frankly, training with students and whatnot on what to do. Going down the way, the advisory, I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay. Can I just, so that specific position, TMHS morning announcements, that is on the recommended proposal from the subcommittee. So I just want to,
It's an increase in the salary.
from what was already recommended, you mean?
Yes.
Okay.
So that's one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then academic planner, our advisory has become more frequent at high school. And all of our roles as administrators and teachers, we are all busy. This is something that we just don't, our advisory requires a lot of backward design. Where do our sophomores need to be? Where do our juniors need to be? What are their milestones of that school year that these advisory teachers could do? Frankly, also, what are some already completely laid out activities that advisor could go give all the teachers? Because for those that don't know, the way it works is, as of right now, twice a month, might increase, who knows? As of now, twice a month, we have students in the same grade level all 3 years come to us. So I have freshmen right now, I'll have them till they're seniors, which is really cool, actually. You watch them grow. You may never have them in class, but you do by the end get to know them, which is pretty awesome, right? But right now, we don't have time to prep for that. And teachers don't have time to prep. Administrators try to make sure they have so many other important things to do with this that's not the actual, prepping or figuring it out. This role is a way to streamline and make both teachers and administrators' lives easy, saying, I made this activity today. The reason we're doing this is because sophomores are getting ready for the MCAS, okay? And this activity is already a later activity I made that you can kind of give to the kids. They're gonna fill this out, do this, work together on this. Social, emotional, maybe even, right? But that would require a huge amount of, frankly, I've said it a million times, backwards design. So it's kind of like prepping for 4 different grade levels and probably year to year because society changes, everything changes. It's a pretty big role. So that was just a way we kind of thought would mitigate the current situation we have with advisory at the high school.
Okay. So we're getting way over.
Yeah, that's fine. The last thing I was just going to say is we are amenable to accepting the conditions of the Appendix B committee. The only thing I put in italics in that highlight is that offline, you and I make sure we both have that exact same doc and say, this is the doc we are amenable to acquiescing. Because, there's been a few different slight changes of docs. We want to make sure we're on the same page of which doc.
Okay.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That was a lot, but important stuff though, so we hope you consider.
Okay. So.
Voice is hoarse.
Logistically, just next couple meetings, can you just confirm those?
Next couple meetings we have on May 9th and May 29th. The next meeting, May 9th, is at the Center Elementary School.
Okay.
Same time. Jason's working on the logistics for that.
Perfect.
We haven't done much from there, so.
In the cafetorium?
I think so.
I think so.
All right.
Very exciting.
I've got that word in again.
Same time, yes, same time.
4:30,
Okay.
yes. Anything else before we adjourn?
Just as a point of process, I have all of these documents in digital form, and instead of killing a bunch of trees every time, is it possible that we, so you guys have your link for your commenting document that you can have? I mean, you've got all these screens up here, we could put it up there as well. We also have a public link tree that anyone can go onto and see what it is. Is that okay? I mean, if you want to print out yours, you can, but instead of us making
Well, I think.
25 copies of
Yeah,
things.
I think if we go strictly digital, could we have the, I would say we should exchange documents ahead of time so that if somebody does want to print it, they can print it.
I mean, I can give it to you the morning of.
Right, right, and I think, we don't, the copy that you're providing, there might be, similar to your side, you want to make your own edits before you share them with us, right?
course.
Or comments, right? We're doing the same thing, so we don't want to necessarily be making it on that document. So we'll make a local copy typically. So we're using that, and then obviously we're referring to something different. So we're trying to equally go back and forth between the two different documents then.
Sure.
So are you hoping that we're going to edit on the same document?
Nope.
Oh, okay.
No, just so that when we're going through
PDF.
it like this,
Yeah.
that we can just go through it on the
Yeah.
digital.
It also
I will
would
circle
eliminate
back
when
with
we don't have enough
Roseanne to
copies.
check in with you for the formal logistics.
Just
on
logistics,
that.
yeah.
Sure, yeah.
That makes
It would also
sense.
be nice, though, for some of us to have them who aren't coming with laptops.
We
I mean, can we do that? I mean, we can, okay.
So, yeah, I'll have Roseanne work with you directly on that, and then whatever you two work through, she can communicate with us, you can communicate with them. Is that fair?
Sounds good.
All right.
All right,
So,
motion to adjourn?
yep, at 7:51.
Perfect.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.